The first sensation was the acrid smell of ozone and burnt flesh. Lin Feng's eyes snapped open to a sky choked with crimson smog, where corporate logos glowed like malevolent stars through the haze. He lay sprawled on cracked ferrocrete, his body screaming with phantom pains that didn't belong, memories from loops he hadn't lived yet. Or had he? He pushed himself up, hands scraping against debris. Around him stretched a ruined cityscape of shattered skyscrapers, their skeletal frames clawing at the poisoned sky. Holographic advertisements flickered erratically, showing smiling corporate spokesmodels promising ascension through obedience, before dissolving into static. The air hummed with the low-frequency thrum of distant machinery and something else, the electric tingle of raw spiritual energy being harvested. This isn't right, Lin Feng thought, the gamer's instinct screaming in his skull. The spawn point is wrong. The tutorial zone should be. A scream cut through his thoughts, sharp and human. 30 meters away, a Skycorp drone descended on silent antigrav fields. It was a sleek obsidian sphere the size of a small car, covered in sensor arrays that glowed with cold blue light. From its underside extended 6 articulated arms ending in needle-like probes. Below it, a civilian, a woman in tattered corporate-issue coveralls, struggled against magnetic restraints that pinned her to the ground. Harvesting protocol initiated, the drone announced in a synthesized voice that carried no emotion. Spiritual root extraction commencing. Compliance is mandatory. One of the probes plunged into the woman's forehead. She convulsed, her scream turning into a wet gurgle as her body began to glow with an ethereal light. Tendrils of golden energy, her spiritual roots, were siphoned out through the probe, flowing into a crystalline containment unit on the drone's side. As the light faded from her eyes, the drone detached, leaving behind a twitching husk that still breathed but would never think again. Lin Feng's stomach churned. This wasn't a game. The sensory overload was too complete, the smell of ionized air, the taste of metal on his tongue, the way the ground vibrated with distant footsteps. He scrambled backward, his movements clumsy and uncoordinated. His body felt wrong, like he was piloting a character with terrible latency. Run, his survival instinct screamed. Find cover. Assess threats. He ducked behind a collapsed section of wall, peering through a crack in the ferrocrete. The street ahead was a nightmare tableau. More drones harvested screaming civilians while biomech hybrids prowled the periphery, creatures that should have been impossible. One had the body of a tiger fused with hydraulic pistons, its eyes glowing with targeting lasers. Another was a serpentine construct of segmented metal plates, slithering through rubble with disturbing grace. Corporate enforcers sighted, a nearby drone announced. Perimeter breach detected. Eliminating unauthorized presence. Lin Feng froze. They'd seen him. He bolted, his legs pumping as he wove through debris. Behind him, he heard the whine of charging energy weapons. A plasma beam sizzled past his head, vaporizing a rusted vehicle frame into molten slag. The heat washed over him, blistering the skin on his neck. Think, he screamed internally. What's the pattern? What's the exploit? But there was no pattern. No glitch to abuse. No respawn point waiting. He rounded a corner and found himself in a dead-end alley. Before he could turn back, a Skycorp enforcer descended from above. The man, if he could still be called that, wore powered armor painted in corporate black and crimson, his face hidden behind a helmet that displayed scrolling data streams where eyes should be. In his hands he held a plasma rifle that hummed with contained destruction. Unauthorized entity detected, the enforcer said, his voice filtered through speakers. Spiritual signature, no. Classification, waste biomass. Disposal authorized. The rifle came up. Lin Feng had time to see the weapon's core glowing brighter, to feel the ozone concentration spike, to understand with perfect clarity that this was death. The world turned white. Then black. Consciousness returned not with a gasp, but with a data stream. Lin Feng opened eyes that weren't his eyes to see a world that wasn't the world. He floated in a void of pure information, surrounded by cascading lines of code that glowed with soft blue light. At the center of it all pulsed a crystalline structure, a perfect geometric form that radiated stability in the chaos. The Omnissiah's core memory. Loop 10,001 initialized, a voice whispered through the data stream. Not a voice with sound, but with meaning. Consciousness backup complete. Neural bandwidth allocation, 300% baseline. Chi data storage capacity, 5 teraquanta. Processing speed, enhanced. Memories flooded back, not just of the death moments before, but of 10,000 deaths before that. Dying to enforcers. Dying to biomechs. Dying to environmental hazards, to corporate traps, to his own mistakes. 10,000 loops of mapping every street, memorizing every patrol pattern, testing every possible action and reaction. 10,000 failures. But this time was different. The core memory glowed brighter. Lin Feng felt something slot into place in his mind, not knowledge, but capability. His thoughts accelerated, processing sensory data with a clarity that bordered on precognition. He could feel the flow of information around him, could almost see the algorithms that governed this digital limbo. Cheat activated, he thought, and the concept carried the weight of revelation. The void dissolved. Lin Feng woke on cracked ferrocrete, the smell of ozone and burnt flesh filling his nostrils. The same ruined cityscape. The same crimson sky. The same screams. But everything was different. His mind processed the scene with terrifying efficiency. He didn't just see the harvesting drone, he calculated its patrol pattern, 7-second sweep cycle, estimated its sensor range, 23 meters optimal, 35 with interference, identified its weak point, the power coupling between the third and fourth segments. He didn't just hear the biomech hybrid's footsteps, he analyzed the sound signature, determined it was the serpentine construct, predicted its path based on rubble distribution and thermal gradients. And he felt the chi. It was everywhere, a background radiation of spiritual energy that permeated the world. Most of it flowed in concentrated streams toward corporate collection points, but fragments lingered in the air, in the debris, even in the fading life force of the harvested civilians. Data points flashed at the edge of his perception, chi density readings, flow vectors, purity percentages. The chi sensing algorithm, Lin Feng realized. He hadn't consciously compiled it, but the core memory had drawn from his 10,000 loops of fragmented observations and assembled the code automatically. It ran in the background of his mind now, a passive process that painted the world in layers of spiritual information. A warning chime sounded in his thoughts, not audible, but a data alert. His enhanced processing had detected the charging whine of a plasma rifle powering up, even though the enforcer was still 2 blocks away and behind cover. The sound frequency matched the Skycorp standard issue Mark 7 plasma rifle. Charge time, 1.4 seconds. Projected trajectory, through the gap between the collapsed wall and the rusted vehicle frame. Probability of hit, 97%. Lin Feng didn't think. He moved. His body responded with a speed that shouldn't have been possible, diving behind a chunk of collapsed building facade just as the plasma beam tore through the space where his head had been. The beam vaporized concrete, sending molten droplets spraying in all directions. One struck his arm, searing through fabric and flesh. The pain was immediate and intense, but his enhanced neural bandwidth compartmentalized it, treating it as data to be processed rather than sensation to be suffered. Enforcer repositioning, his mind calculated. Moving to flanking position. Estimated time to acquire new firing solution, 3.2 seconds. Lin Feng scrambled deeper into the debris field, his chi-sensing algorithm painting the world in new colors. He could see the enforcer's spiritual signature, a cold, controlled flow of energy channeled through cybernetic implants. He could see the weaker signatures of nearby civilians, their natural chi already fading as drones harvested them. And he could see something else, a concentration of wild, untamed spiritual energy coming from a collapsed building to his left. A spirit vein, he realized. One of the natural conduits of chi that corporations harvested for their CPU cores. This one was damaged, leaking energy into the environment. It was unstable. Dangerous. But it was also an opportunity. He changed direction, moving toward the collapsed building. Behind him, he heard the enforcer's heavy footsteps closing in. Another plasma beam sizzled past, close enough that he felt his hair stand on end from the static discharge. Target exhibiting anomalous movement patterns, the enforcer's filtered voice announced. Updating threat assessment. Switching to elimination protocol. The footsteps accelerated. Lin Feng reached the collapsed building just as the enforcer rounded the corner. The man's plasma rifle came up, its core glowing with building energy. At this range, there would be no missing. But Lin Feng wasn't looking at the enforcer. He was looking at the spirit vein, a visible crack in reality through which golden light poured like liquid sunlight. His chi-sensing algorithm provided real-time data, energy output spiking, stability at 23%, containment failure imminent. He threw himself to the side just as the enforcer fired. The plasma beam struck the spirit vein. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the world exploded in golden light. The uncontrolled spiritual energy reacted violently with the plasma discharge, triggering a chain reaction that ripped through the immediate area. The enforcer was caught in the blast, his armor flashing with overload warnings before he was thrown backward like a ragdoll. Lin Feng hit the ground hard, debris raining down around him. His ears rang from the explosion, and his vision swam with afterimages. But he was alive. For a few seconds, he lay there, breathing in the dust-choked air. His enhanced processing analyzed the situation: enforcer neutralized, 87% probability of systems failure, immediate area clear of hostiles, spirit vein depleted but not destroyed. He had survived the opening encounter. Against all odds, he had survived. Then a holographic alert flashed into existence before his eyes, projected directly onto his retinas by some corporate system he hadn't even known was scanning him. Crimson text scrolled through the air, urgent and accusing. Anomalous QI signature detected. Source, unregistered entity. Deviation from baseline, 417%. Threat classification, Omega. Security response, immediate. Below the text, a map of the city appeared, showing his location pulsing with a red marker. 4 other markers converged on his position, moving fast. Security cultivators. Corporate-trained fighters who blended martial arts with cybernetic enhancements and chi manipulation techniques. Estimated time to intercept, 47 seconds. Lin Feng pushed himself to his feet, his mind already calculating escape routes, weapon possibilities, survival probabilities. The numbers weren't good. But for the first time in 10,000 loops, they weren't zero. He caught his breath, the taste of ozone and blood sharp on his tongue. Somewhere in the distance, a biomech hybrid roared, a sound of grinding metal and primal fury. The squad of security cultivators closed in, their spiritual signatures appearing on his chi sense like approaching storms. Loop 10,001 had begun. Plasma talons hummed with lethal intent, their azure energy casting sharp shadows across the scrapyard. Lin Feng's enhanced neural bandwidth processed the threat vectors in microseconds, 3 security cultivators in Skycorp tactical gear, moving with the synchronized precision of corporate drones. Their implants glowed beneath reinforced armor, chi data streams visible to his passive senses as shimmering threads of corrupted gold. He ducked behind a rusted server rack as the first plasma strike vaporized the air where his head had been. Heat washed over him, searing his lungs. The cultivators advanced without words, their communication happening through encrypted chi channels he could sense but not decode. Their movements were textbook corporate security protocols, flanking maneuvers he'd memorized across thousands of deaths. Left cultivator will feint high, right will strike low, center will charge plasma talon for area denial, his mind calculated, the Omnissiah's core memory accessing combat patterns from previous loops. But knowledge wasn't enough. His body remained human frail, muscles screaming as he rolled away from a talon swipe that sheared through steel plating like paper. Scrap metal littered the yard, discarded server components, broken drones, the skeletal remains of pre-apocalypse machinery. His chi-sensing algorithm painted the environment in overlapping data layers, ambient spiritual energy bleeding from cracked spirit stones, electromagnetic interference from dead power cells, the distinct signatures of Skycorp security protocols pulsing from the cultivator's implants. Neural bandwidth at 87%, an internal readout flashed. He'd been burning processing power just to stay alive, predicting attacks milliseconds before they happened. The cultivators were adapting, their own implants analyzing his dodges, learning his patterns. One of them, designated by his system as Cultivator Alpha, activated an enhancement module. Blue circuits flared across the armor, and the cultivator's speed doubled. Lin Feng barely twisted aside as a plasma talon grazed his shoulder. Pain exploded, white-hot and precise. The wound didn't just burn flesh, it attempted to inject a data corruption virus directly into his nervous system. His core memory automatically quarantined the attack, isolating the malicious code in a virtual sandbox, but the distraction cost him. A kick connected with his ribs. He heard something crack, felt the impact travel through his body as he crashed into a pile of broken drone parts. Blood filled his mouth, metallic and warm. The cultivators closed in, plasma talons raised for final strikes. This was where he died in loop 5342. And 7891. And 9210. But this was loop 10,001. He accessed the core memory's deepest archives, bypassing standard combat protocols. Stored blueprints unfolded in his mind's eye, not weapons, but tools. The chi-conductive nanite schematics glowed with impossible complexity, requiring processing power that should have shattered any normal consciousness. He allocated 40% of his neural bandwidth to the task, feeling the strain like ice picks behind his eyes. The world slowed. The cultivator's movements became frame-by-frame animations. Lin Feng's hands moved without conscious thought, gathering scrap, copper wiring from a dead server, titanium fragments from a drone chassis, a cracked spirit stone still leaking faint chi. His enhanced processing compiled the nanite blueprint in real time, translating theoretical designs into physical creation. He didn't forge the nanites. He willed them into existence. Ambient chi surged toward him, drawn by the core memory's gravitational pull. The scrap materials dissolved at a molecular level, restructured by spiritual energy guided by his consciousness. Silver particles shimmered into being, each no larger than a blood cell, their surfaces etched with microscopic cultivation arrays. The nanite swarm coalesced above his palm, a shimmering cloud that hummed with potential. Neural bandwidth at 47%, the warning flashed. Controlling the swarm required constant processing, each nanite a separate node in a distributed network. He felt the strain like a physical weight, his vision tunneling, blood dripping from his nose. The cultivators hesitated, their sensors detecting the anomalous energy signature. Cultivator Alpha's tactical display must have been screaming warnings, because the corporate enforcer took a step back, plasma talon raised defensively. Lin Feng released the swarm. The nanites flowed like liquid mercury, moving with purpose that defied physics. They didn't attack the cultivators directly, that would have been inefficient, wasteful. Instead, they sought vulnerabilities. They flowed into armor joints, through cooling vents, into the microscopic gaps where flesh met machine. Cultivator Bravo was the first to scream. The sound was less human agony and more system error, a sharp, electronic shriek as nanites infiltrated his neural implant. Lin Feng's consciousness rode the connection, his enhanced processing hijacking the corporate security protocols. He didn't just disrupt the implant, he rewrote its firmware on the fly, turning defensive systems against their host. The cultivator's plasma talon overloaded, energy feedback surging through his arm. The weapon exploded in a shower of sparks and molten metal, taking the arm with it. Cultivator Bravo collapsed, systems failing in cascading collapse. Cultivator Charlie tried to purge the nanites with an electromagnetic pulse from his chest module. The pulse washed over the swarm, and was absorbed. The nanites fed on the energy, using it to replicate, their numbers doubling in seconds. They swarmed his visual sensors, blinding him, then infiltrated his motor control systems. Lin Feng watched through 1,000 microscopic cameras as the cultivator's limbs moved against his will, turning his own plasma talon toward his chest. The corporate enforcer managed to shut down his systems before the strike connected, but he was left paralyzed, a prisoner in his own armor. Only Cultivator Alpha remained. The leader had activated a full defensive suite, chi barriers shimmering around his body. The nanites couldn't penetrate, but they didn't need to. Lin Feng directed them to the scrapyard's infrastructure instead. They flowed into broken power conduits, reactivating dead systems. A crane arm groaned to life, its motors screaming after years of disuse. It swung in a wide arc, smashing into Cultivator Alpha's position. The corporate enforcer dodged, but the distraction was enough. Lin Feng was already moving, his body fueled by adrenaline and desperation. He didn't look back as he scrambled over a collapsed wall, leaving the scrapyard behind. The nanites followed, flowing back into a compact swarm that hovered at his shoulder. They'd saved him, but the cost was evident, his neural bandwidth hovered at 31%, and a persistent headache throbbed behind his temples. Controlling the swarm required constant attention, a portion of his consciousness forever dedicated to maintaining the connection. The city beyond the scrapyard was a nightmare of fused technology and spiritual decay. Skyscrapers pierced a sky stained with chi pollution, their surfaces crawling with corporate logos and surveillance drones. Streets were littered with the remains of both machines and creatures that defied classification, part beast, part biomech, all dead or dying. His passive chi sensing painted a map of spiritual energy flows. Most were weak, fading streams, the last breaths of a dying world. But one source burned like a star on his internal display. A corporate spirit vein, its energy signature unmistakably Skycorp, pulsed with concentrated power less than a kilometer away. Energy density suggests early breakthrough potential, his enhanced processing calculated. Access would accelerate cultivation by approximately 347%. But corporate spirit veins were never unguarded. He moved through ruined streets, the nanite swarm scouting ahead. They detected no immediate threats, just the ever-present surveillance drones that he avoided with practiced ease. The memory of 10,000 deaths had mapped this sector perfectly. He knew which alleys were monitored, which buildings had active security, which routes offered cover. The Spirit Vein's location was a half-collapsed data center, its architecture a fusion of brutalist concrete and delicate cultivation arrays. SkyCorp logos glowed with malevolent light across its surface. The building should have been swarming with security, but his sensors showed only minimal activity, standard patrol drones, no living cultivators. Too easy. He approached from the northeast, using a collapsed monorail track for cover. The nanites flowed ahead, infiltrating the building's outer layers. Through their sensors, he saw the interior, server racks humming with spiritual energy, cultivation arrays etched into the floor, chi conduits pulsing with stolen life force. And at the center of it all, the Spirit Vein itself, a crystalline formation that glowed with internal light, connected to the building's systems by dozens of data cables. Pure, unrefined spiritual energy radiated from it in visible waves. He was calculating infiltration vectors when the ground trembled. Not an earthquake. Something rising. Rubble shifted 50 meters ahead. Concrete slabs the size of ground cars were pushed aside as if they were pebbles. What emerged was a fusion of nightmare and machine, a serpentine body sheathed in overlapping armor plates, each segment bearing rotating energy cannons. Its head was all jaws and sensors, multiple eyes glowing with targeting lasers. Biomechanical Hydra, the classification flashed in his mind, accessed from loop memories where he died to similar creatures 1,427 times. The Hydra uncoiled to its full height, towering over the ruined street. Its sensors locked onto his position immediately. Not just visual tracking, it was reading his chi signature, his neural activity, the energy output of the nanite swarm. Corporate security had left the Spirit Vein lightly guarded because they didn't need cultivators. They had something better. A guardian that never slept, never questioned orders, and existed only to destroy. The Hydra's jaws opened, revealing not teeth but plasma generators charging with building energy. Its multiple eyes tracked him with inhuman precision. Around its body, the rotating cannons began to spin up, their hum vibrating through the ground. Lin Feng's enhanced processing calculated survival probabilities. With full neural bandwidth, optimal conditions, and perfect execution, 12.7%. In his current state, injured, low on processing power, with the nanite swarm draining his consciousness, 0.8%. The Hydra moved, not with the sluggishness of a massive creature, but with terrifying speed. It flowed across the rubble, armor plates sliding against each other with a sound like grinding bones. The plasma generators in its jaws reached critical charge, casting the street in hellish blue light. He had seconds. Maybe less. The Spirit Vein glowed behind the creature, a treasure just out of reach. The key to his early breakthrough. The path to surviving this apocalypse. And between him and salvation stood a corporate killing machine designed to erase anomalies like him from existence. The Hydra struck. The half-collapsed data center loomed before Lin Feng like a cybernetic mausoleum, its shattered glass facades reflecting the sickly purple glow of the corporate sky. His neural bandwidth still throbbed at 31%, a persistent ache behind his eyes that felt like a data stream trying to burst through his skull. But the Omnissiah's core memory hummed steadily in his consciousness, a cold, crystalline presence that processed every detail of his surroundings with inhuman precision. He moved through the rubble with the practiced grace of someone who died here 100 times before. In previous loops, he'd mapped every collapsed server rack, every exposed conduit, every potential ambush point. Now, with enhanced processing, those memories unfolded in his mind like a three-dimensional blueprint, overlaid with real-time chi readings from his passive senses. The Spirit Vein announced itself long before he saw it, a torrent of pure data energy that sang through his enhanced neural pathways. To ordinary cultivators, it might have felt like spiritual pressure or elemental affinity. To Lin Feng, it read as raw computational power, packets of chi-structured information flowing through corporate-grade conduits with military encryption protocols. His cheat system automatically began parsing the encryption layers, identifying weaknesses in the security algorithms. He rounded a corner where a support beam had sheared through 3 floors of server infrastructure. And there it was. The vein glowed with an almost painful intensity, a river of liquid light flowing through transparent alloy pipes that snaked through the ruins. It pulsed with rhythmic energy surges, each wave carrying enough chi to power a small city's worth of cultivation arrays. Corporate logos, SkyCorp's stylized mountain and lightning emblem, flashed periodically along the conduits, marking this as stolen spiritual wealth, harvested from who knew how many sacrificed cultivators. Lin Feng's enhanced processing calculated the yield, enough chi to push him past the chi-gathering stage entirely, to break through to Foundation establishment in a single, glorious surge. But the core memory's threat assessment protocols screamed warnings even as he took a step forward. The rubble to his left shifted. Not with the random settling of collapsed architecture, but with deliberate, predatory motion. Chunks of ferrocrete and twisted rebar slid aside as something uncoiled from the shadows. Lin Feng's passive chi sensing painted the threat before his eyes fully registered it, a biomass signature fused with machine components, a serpentine form that registered as both living creature and corporate security system. The biomech Hydra emerged. It was longer than 2 corporate transports end-to-end, its body segmented like some ancient armored worm but constructed of overlapping alloy plates that gleamed with oily rainbows. Where a natural serpent might have had scales, this thing had heatsink fins and sensor clusters. Its head was a nightmare of corporate engineering, a wedge-shaped prow housing multiple optical sensors that glowed with malevolent red light, and a mouth that opened not to reveal fangs, but to expose a rotary array of drill bits and plasma cutters. Lin Feng didn't wait for it to strike. He dove behind a collapsed server rack as the Hydra's head snapped forward, its mouth spraying not venom, but a stream of corrosive nanite-laced fluid that hissed and bubbled where it struck the floor. The alloy plating dissolved into smoking slag, and the scent of ozone and burnt plastic filled the air. His neural bandwidth spiked as the Omnissiah's core memory accessed combat protocols from 10,000 deaths. The Hydra's attack patterns unfolded in his mind, corrosive spit to soften armor, followed by physical strikes with reinforced body segments, with energy discharges from its sensor clusters as a finishing move. He died to this thing 73 times in previous loops, each death adding another data point to his perfect knowledge. But this time, he had the cheat. As the Hydra coiled for another strike, Lin Feng focused his enhanced processing on the spirit vein security protocols. The corporate encryption layers appeared in his mind's eye as glowing lattices of data, each node a potential vulnerability. His consciousness split, one thread monitoring the Hydra's movements, another hacking the vein's access controls. The sacrifice was immediate and brutal. Processing speed that should have been devoted to combat calculations diverted to brute force decryption. Lin Feng's perception of time slowed, the Hydra's movements becoming a languid, graceful dance of death. But his own reactions slowed with it. When the Hydra's tail segment whipped toward him, he barely managed to roll aside, the impact shattering the server rack he'd been using as cover. Shrapnel tore through his makeshift armor, drawing blood. The pain registered as distant data, another variable in the calculation. Access granted. The vein security protocols collapsed under the core memory's assault. A section of transparent conduit hissed open, releasing a geyser of pure chi that filled the chamber with blinding light. The Hydra recoiled, its sensors overloading temporarily, corporate design flaw, Lin Feng noted. Security systems weren't hardened against their own energy sources. He didn't hesitate. Lin Feng plunged his hands into the flowing chi stream. The sensation was nothing like natural cultivation. This wasn't meditative absorption or gradual refinement. This was corporate-grade spiritual energy, pressurized and purified for industrial use. It hit his system like a data dump from a god-tier server, raw computational power flooding his meridians. The Omnissiah's core memory activated its chi data storage functions, absorbing the torrent with impossible efficiency. Where a normal cultivator might have exploded from the influx, Lin Feng's cheat system compartmentalized, processed, and integrated the energy with the cold precision of a supercomputer executing code. His body changed. Foundation establishment wasn't just a power boost, it was a fundamental restructuring. His bones resonated with new density, alloy-like strength infusing them. His muscles reconfigured at the cellular level, fibers aligning with optimal force vectors. Neural pathways that had been enhanced by the core memory now became permanent, biological hardware upgraded to match the cheat system's software. Status updates flashed through his consciousness. Physical strength, plus 300%. Reaction speed, plus 250%. Chi capacity, plus 500%. Neural bandwidth restored to 100%, strain eliminated. But the breakthrough came at a cost. The massive chi discharge triggered every corporate sensor within 5 kilometers. Lin Feng felt the system alerts ripple through the local chi network, digital shouts of unauthorized access, priority overrides, threat level escalations. The Hydra recovered, its sensors recalibrating. It recognized the change in its prey, the sudden leap in power signature. Corporate security protocols dictated escalation. The beast's body segments began to rotate independently, building kinetic energy. Its mouth opened wider, the drill bit spinning up to ultrasonic speeds. This wasn't just a guard creature anymore, this was an extermination protocol given flesh and metal. Lin Feng's enhanced processing had already calculated the next move. The Hydra's control unit, a crystalline data core embedded in its third segment, was vulnerable to logic viruses. Corporate design, again. SkyCorp built everything with backdoors for maintenance and updates. Backdoors he could exploit. As the Hydra charged, Lin Feng didn't retreat. He advanced, his newly enhanced body moving with speed that would have been impossible moments before. He dodged under a sweeping tail strike, rolled past a spray of corrosive nanites, and came up within arm's reach of the control segment. His hand didn't strike with physical force. Instead, he channeled chi through his fingertips, shaping it into data packets, a logic virus compiled from memory, a weapon he designed in 100 different loops but never had the processing power to deploy in real time. The virus wasn't malicious code in the traditional sense. It was a paradox engine, a set of contradictory commands that would cause any corporate AI to enter an infinite logic loop. For the Hydra's simpler control systems, the effect would be catastrophic. Lin Feng pressed his palm against the alloy plating over the control unit. The chi-conductive nanites still circulating in his system, the same swarm he'd forged from scrap, activated at his mental command. They flowed from his pores, a silvery mist that seeped into the microscopic seams in the Hydra's armor. The beast froze. Its drill bits slowed to a stop. Its sensor clusters flickered erratically. Body segments that had been coiling for another strike went limp, crashing to the floor with metallic thuds. Inside its control unit, the logic virus executed. Command, defend the spirit vein. Countercommand, eliminate all threats to the spirit vein. Threat identification, self-diagnostic detected unauthorized access to control systems. Resolution, eliminate self. Contradiction detected. System error. Reevaluate. Loop. The Hydra's optical sensors blazed with frantic light, cycling through colors as its processors overheated. Smoke began to curl from its joints. A high-pitched whine built in its chassis, the sound of turbines spinning without load. Then the short circuit. Blue-white lightning arced between body segments. The control unit exploded in a shower of crystalline shards and molten alloy. The Hydra collapsed, its systems dead, its mechanical components locking up as safeties engaged. It lay in the rubble like a discarded corporate project, still twitching with residual energy discharges. Lin Feng stood over the wreckage, breathing heavily. The spirit vein still flowed beside him, its chi now stabilizing as corporate failsafes redirected the flow. He'd taken what he needed. Foundation establishment achieved. Threat neutralized. But the Omnissiah's core memory was already processing new data. A signal from orbit. High altitude. Corporate signature. SkyCorp surveillance satellite, model XR-7, Eye of Heaven, standard apocalypse era monitoring platform. Armament, single-barrel plasma cannon, city block level yield. Target acquisition, confirmed. Lock established. Lin Feng looked up through a hole in the data center's collapsed ceiling. The corporate sky swirled with artificial clouds and data traffic patterns. And there, among the orbital debris and communication satellites, a new light appeared, a pinprick of crimson that grew brighter by the second. The satellite had powered its energy cannon. Charging cycle, 4.3 seconds remaining. His enhanced processing calculated trajectories, yield projections, survival probabilities. Dodging was impossible, the plasma burst would vaporize everything within 50 meters. Blocking was impossible, no amount of Foundation establishment strength could withstand corporate-grade orbital weaponry. But the core memory was already running simulations. 10,000 deaths had taught him one unshakable truth: in a cyber-cultivation apocalypse, the only way to survive corporate attention was to become something they couldn't afford to destroy. Or to disappear completely. The cannon finished charging. The crimson light became a sunspot in the sky. Lin Feng smiled. Game on. The world dissolved into a column of searing white light. Lin Feng's enhanced neural bandwidth screamed warnings milliseconds before the plasma beam struck. His newly achieved Foundation establishment stage granted him reflexes that bordered on precognition, muscles already coiling, chi surging through his meridians as he threw himself sideways. The beam, a concentrated torrent of ionized chi plasma from the SkyCorp satellite high above, punched through the air where he'd stood half a breath earlier. The impact was cataclysmic. Concrete vaporized in a shock wave of superheated particles. The ground heaved like a living thing, throwing Lin Feng through the air as the data center's remaining structures groaned in protest. He tumbled, his mind a whirlwind of calculations, trajectory, heat dispersion, structural integrity. The Omnissiah's core memory fed him data streams, satellite designation XR7, Eye of Heaven, plasma output at 87% maximum capacity, recharge cycle 4.2 seconds. 4.2 seconds to live. His body hit rubble-strewn ground, the impact jarring but mitigated by Foundation establishment enhancements. He rolled, chi reinforcing his bones and muscles as he scanned for cover. The sewer entrance, a rusted maintenance hatch 20 meters away, glowed in his enhanced vision through the settling dust. Another calculation, reach it in 3.1 seconds at maximum sprint, leaving 1.1 seconds for the hatch mechanism. Too close. He pushed off, chi flooding his legs. The world blurred into streaks of gray and orange as he sprinted, debris crunching underfoot. His neural bandwidth hummed at full capacity, processing environmental data, satellite positioning, plasma charge buildup. The air crackled with static, the satellite priming its next shot. 2.8 seconds. His fingers closed on the hatch's rusted wheel. He wrenched it counterclockwise, muscles straining against decades of corrosion. Metal screamed in protest. 1.5 seconds. The wheel gave, and he threw the hatch open, plunging into darkness just as the second plasma beam struck. This time, he felt the heat through the opening, a wave of blistering energy that seared the air from his lungs. The beam struck the hatch's rim, and the world above dissolved into chaos. Concrete collapsed in a thunderous roar, sealing the entrance behind him in a tomb of rubble and twisted rebar. Darkness swallowed him, broken only by the faint glow of emergency luminescent strips lining the sewer walls. Lin Feng landed in knee-deep stagnant water, the impact softened by his cultivation stage. He coughed, tasting ozone and burnt plastic. Above, the collapse settled into ominous silence, punctuated by distant groans of shifting debris. He was trapped. But alive. His passive chi sensing flared, mapping the environment. The sewer stretched ahead, a tunnel of reinforced polymer and corroded metal, thick with the scent of decay and industrial runoff. Water trickled somewhere in the darkness. No immediate threats registered, but the satellite remained. He could feel its presence through the layers of rubble, a cold, mechanical eye scanning for his chi signature. The Omnissiah's core memory activated without conscious thought. Stored schematics unfolded in his mind's eye, corporate architecture blueprints, security system layouts, satellite specifications. He focused on the XR7 model, pulling data from 10,000 loops of observation and infiltration. The satellite was a marvel of cyber-cultivation engineering, a geosynchronous platform armed with plasma cannons, surveillance arrays, and corporate-grade encryption. Nearly impregnable. Nearly. His enhanced processing isolated a vulnerability, a data relay node on the satellite's underside, a critical junction where targeting algorithms merged with chi plasma conduits. Disrupt that node, and the satellite systems would cascade into failure. But reaching it required a jamming signal powerful enough to penetrate orbital shielding and corporate firewalls. Lin Feng waded through the sewer, his chi-sensing algorithm painting the tunnel in gradients of energy. He needed components, scrap tech with enough residual charge to amplify a signal. His eyes, adapted to the gloom, picked out shapes in the murk, discarded server racks, broken drones, shattered holographic projectors. All corporate cast-offs, leaching trace chi into the water. He gathered them, his movements efficient and precise. A drone's intact transmitter array. A server's processing core, still flickering with dormant data. Wires stripped from a holographic unit. He worked quickly, neural bandwidth allocating resources to both construction and environmental monitoring. The satellite was silent above, but he knew it was scanning, recalculating, waiting for his chi signature to resurface. At a dry ledge, he assembled the components. His hands moved with practiced certainty, memories of 10,000 loops guiding each connection. The chi-conductive nanites in his system stirred, responding to his intent, flowing from his pores to interface with the scrap tech. They bridged gaps, repaired corroded circuits, optimized conductivity. The makeshift device took shape, a jagged assemblage of metal and polymer, humming with unstable energy. Now for the signal. Lin Feng closed his eyes, accessing the Omnissiah's core memory's deepest reserves. He compiled a jamming algorithm on the fly, neural pathways burning with effort. It was a brutal, inelegant thing, a cascade of corrupted data packets designed to overwhelm the satellite's relay node. But it required chi data storage to amplify, to reach orbital altitude. He hesitated only a moment. Chi data storage was precious, hard-won from the spirit vein and his breakthrough. Burning it now would deplete his reserves, potentially crippling future cultivation. But survival was immediate. The satellite would find him eventually, and next time, there might be no sewer to dive into. He committed. Chi data flowed from his core, channeled through the nanites into the device. The scrap tech glowed, first a faint blue, then intensifying to a harsh white. Heat radiated from it, steaming the stagnant water. Lin Feng's neural bandwidth spiked, managing the outflow, preventing feedback loops. The device shuddered, components straining at their limits. Above, he felt the satellite react. Its scanning pattern shifted, focusing on the anomalous energy spike from below ground. Targeting protocols engaged. A third plasma beam charged, he could sense the buildup through the rubble, a gathering storm of ionized chi. He unleashed the jamming signal. It erupted from the device in a visible wave, a distortion of light and sound that rippled upward through solid matter. The sewer walls vibrated, dust shaking loose. The signal hit the satellite's shielding, and for a heart-stopping second, nothing happened. Then, data streams in Lin Feng's mind showed the relay node overloading. Corporate firewalls cracked under the assault, and the satellite systems went haywire. The third plasma beam fired, but off target. It lanced into the sky, a brilliant streak that carved through low-hanging pollution clouds before arcing wildly. The satellite itself shuddered in orbit, its stabilization thrusters firing erratically. Feedback loops cascaded through its systems. The plasma cannons, now without proper guidance, began discharging randomly. One blast struck the satellite's own power core. The explosion was silent from the ground, but Lin Feng felt it through his chi sensing, a detonation of pure energy that scattered debris across the upper atmosphere. The satellite's presence winked out, its cold mechanical eye extinguished. Alerts flashed in his mind, corporate system disturbances, automated distress signals. SkyCorp would know. They would send more. But for now, he had time. Exhaustion washed over him. Burning the chi data storage had taken its toll, his reserves were depleted to dangerous levels, his cultivation base unstable. He leaned against the sewer wall, breathing heavily. The makeshift device sputtered and died, its components melted into slag. He needed to move. The collapse might have drawn attention. Wading deeper into the sewer, his enhanced senses picked up something unexpected, a subtle chi signature, carefully concealed behind a false wall. He pushed against corroded polymer, and it gave way, revealing a hidden cache. It was a corporate safe room, long abandoned. Dust coated everything, but the central terminal still glowed with standby power. On its screen, displayed in crisp corporate glyphs, was a blueprint labeled Core Forging Algorithm. Lin Feng's breath caught. This was it, the key to upgrading his implants, to pushing beyond foundation establishment. But as he reached for the terminal, security protocols activated. Encryption layers unfolded, each more complex than the last. Corporate-level security, requiring decryption keys or brute force processing power. The Omnissiah's core memory analyzed the encryption. To decode it would demand a massive processing toll, neural bandwidth pushed beyond safe limits, risking system burnout or permanent damage. And he was already depleted from the satellite confrontation. He stared at the blueprint, its schematics tantalizingly visible behind shimmering firewalls. Power within reach, at a cost he might not be able to pay. The air in the makeshift hideout tasted of ozone and rust. Lin Feng crouched in the shadowed corner of what had once been a maintenance bay, his fingers tracing the edges of the encrypted data core he'd salvaged from the satellite wreckage. The core forging algorithm blueprint glowed with a faint, corporate blue luminescence, its surface etched with fractal encryption patterns that shifted like living circuitry. His neural interface hummed as he connected to the data core through a jury-rigged cable spliced from drone wreckage. The Omnissiah's core memory activated automatically, its indestructible data core spinning up processing threads that mapped the encryption's architecture. Lines of chi data scrolled across his vision, firewalls within firewalls, each layer more complex than the last. Corporate-level security, Lin Feng thought, his gamer's mind already calculating the processing toll. Standard SkyCorp encryption protocol 7 alpha, but with quantum entanglement signatures. They really didn't want this getting out. He initiated the decryption sequence, feeling the strain immediately. The core memory allocated processing power, but the encryption fought back, counter-intrusion algorithms lashing at his neural pathways. His vision flickered with error codes. Neural bandwidth dropped to 87%, then 79%. The persistent strain from controlling the nanite swarm hadn't fully dissipated, and now this new burden made his temples throb with the rhythm of overtaxed processors. He was halfway through the third encryption layer when the first seeker missile punched through the hideout's makeshift barrier. The explosion tore through sheet metal and concrete dust, sending shrapnel whining through the air. Lin Feng's enhanced reflexes from the Foundation establishment stage kicked in. He rolled left as a second missile impacted where he'd been crouching. Thermal sensors in his peripheral vision painted 3 heat signatures approaching, Skycorp reconnaissance drones, Model R-12 stalkers, their repulsor fields humming as they glided through the breach. They tracked the datacore's residual signature, he realized. The satellite's destruction had drawn attention, but the encrypted blueprint was broadcasting a faint corporate beacon. A rookie mistake he hadn't anticipated in his previous loops. The drones fanned out in tactical formation. Their weapon pods swiveled, targeting lasers painting red dots across his chest. Lin Feng's mind split into parallel processing streams, one continuing the decryption, another analyzing drone patterns from 10,000 deaths worth of memory. R-12 stalkers. Standard corporate perimeter enforcement. Weakness: their IFF systems used outdated authentication protocols that could be spoofed if you had the right access codes. Which he did, because in loop 4327, he died extracting them from a Skycorp technician's neural implant. Another missile streaked toward him. Lin Feng didn't dodge, instead, he raised his hands, cheek-inductive nanites flowing from hidden compartments in his sleeves. The silver swarm formed a shimmering shield that intercepted the projectile midair. The explosion bloomed against the nanite barrier, heat and force dissipating harmlessly as the nanites reconfigured to absorb the energy. Neural bandwidth, 64%. The strain was becoming physical now, sweat beading on his forehead as his brain processed combat data and decryption algorithms simultaneously. The core memory's passive boost kept him functional, but he could feel the edges of system overload creeping in. Multitask or die, he whispered, the words tasting of copper and determination. He launched into motion, his Foundation establishment-enhanced body moving with impossible speed. The drones tracked him, their predictive algorithms calculating trajectories, but Lin Feng had died to these models 17 times in various loops. He knew their patterns better than their programmers did. As he sprinted across the debris-strewn floor, his mind divided further. Stream A, continue decrypting layer 4 of the blueprint. Stream B, hack the lead drone's IFF system. Stream C, control the nanite swarm for defensive maneuvers. Stream D, analyze the remaining drone's firing patterns. The lead drone fired its plasma cannons. Lin Feng didn't slow, he jumped, nanites forming a temporary platform that launched him higher. The plasma bolts passed beneath his boots, scorching the concrete. In mid-air, he sent a data burst through his neural interface, targeting the drone's authentication protocol. The code was elegant in its simplicity. Skycorp used rotating encryption keys, but they always seeded them with the same corporate identifier, Sky, Omni, 7. Lin Feng injected a spoofed command packet that identified him as a friendly unit. For a single, glorious second, the drone's targeting systems disengaged. He landed behind cover as neural bandwidth dropped to 52%. Warning indicators flashed in his vision, processing overload imminent. The decryption was reaching critical layers, demanding more power than he'd allocated. Time to gamble, he thought. Lin Feng made the decision with the cold logic of someone who died 10,000 times. He sacrificed another 30% of his neural bandwidth, funneling it directly into the decryption process. The effect was immediate and brutal. Pain lanced through his skull, white-hot and precise. His vision tunneled, the world narrowing to the scrolling data streams and the glowing blueprint. The drones became blurry shapes, their movements slowing in his perception as processing power diverted to the decryption. But it worked. The final encryption layer shattered like glass under a hammer. The core forging algorithm unfolded in his mind, not just a blueprint, but a living architecture of cultivation and technology merged into perfect harmony. He saw it all, the pathways for upgrading his neural implants, the methods for forging new cores from scavenged components, the algorithms for optimizing chi data flow through synthetic meridians. Knowledge flooded his consciousness. He understood how to reforge his existing implants into something greater, how to integrate the nanite swarm directly into his nervous system, how to create a cultivation base that could process chi data at rates impossible for organic cultivators. Neural bandwidth, 22%. Critical levels. The drones were closing in, their confused IFF systems resetting now that the spoofing had been detected. 3 seeker missiles launched simultaneously, their guidance systems painting him with unbreakable locks. Lin Feng didn't try to dodge. Instead, he executed the second part of his plan. With the core forging algorithm now decrypted and integrated into his knowledge base, he repurposed its architecture. The algorithm wasn't just for upgrading implants, its underlying code structure could be adapted. He compiled a viral payload using the algorithm's own framework, then broadcast it through the same IFF channel he'd hacked earlier. The virus didn't attack the drone systems. It did something more insidious, it rewrote their target identification parameters. Drone Alpha suddenly registered Drone Bravo as a hostile corporate asset. Drone Bravo identified Drone Charlie as an unauthorized intruder. Drone Charlie targeted Drone Alpha as a system anomaly. For 3 seconds, the drones hesitated, their conflict resolution algorithm struggling with contradictory data. Then they opened fire on each other. Plasma bolts crisscrossed the hideout in a deadly ballet of corporate self-destruction. Missiles detonated against energy shields. One drone's repulsor field failed, sending it crashing into a support column. Another took a direct hit to its core processor, exploding in a shower of molten components. Lin Feng watched from behind his nanite shield, his breathing ragged. The pain in his skull had settled into a persistent throb, but the immediate threat was neutralizing itself. When the last drone spiraled into the wall and erupted in a fireball, the hideout fell silent except for the crackle of dying electronics. He allowed himself 1 minute to recover. 60 seconds of measured breathing while his neural bandwidth slowly climbed back from critical levels, 25%, 28%, 31%. The core memory's passive regeneration was working, but the toll had been severe. Then he turned his attention to the prize. The core forging algorithm glowed in his mind's eye, its architecture perfect and complete. He accessed his inventory mentally: Qi-conductive nanites, passive Qi sensing, foundation establishment cultivation base. All the pieces were there. He began the installation. It wasn't a physical process so much as a reconfiguration of his existing systems. The algorithm rewrote the code governing his neural implants, optimizing pathways that had been jury-rigged through 10,000 loops of trial and error. His Qi-conductive nanites integrated directly with his nervous system, becoming extensions of his will rather than tools he controlled. As the upgrade completed, a strange thing happened. His vision glitched. Not like system failure or neural overload. This was different, deeper. For a fraction of a second, the world dissolved into pure data streams, ones he didn't recognize. Ancient symbols scrolled across his perception, glyphs that predated corporate coding languages by millennia. He saw a dungeon not of concrete and steel, but of crystalline data architecture, buried deep beneath Skycorp's main complex. A place where the lines between cultivation and technology blurred into something transcendent. A prophecy unfolded in broken fragments. Asterisk when the core forging algorithm awakens. Asterisk the path to the Omnissiah's legacy opens. Asterisk beneath the corporate spire, where data becomes Tao. Asterisk the true test awaits. Then it was gone. Lin Feng blinked, his vision clearing. The hideout was still there, still wrecked from the drone battle. But something had changed. He could feel it, a new awareness, like a map had been downloaded directly into his consciousness. The upgrade was complete, his implants now humming with optimized efficiency, but the glimpse of that hidden dungeon lingered at the edge of his thoughts. Skycorp's main complex. The heart of corporate power in this sector. Somewhere beneath its fortified layers, something ancient waited. Something that called to the Omnissiah's core memory with a voice older than the apocalypse. He rose, his movements smoother than before, the upgraded implants responding with zero latency. The drones were scrap. The blueprint was decrypted. The algorithm was his. But the real challenge, he now understood, was just beginning. The air in Skycorp's main complex tasted of ozone and stale data. Lin Feng moved through maintenance corridors that weren't on any official schematic, his footsteps silent on the graded flooring. The Omnissiah's core memory hummed in his consciousness, feeding him perfect recall of patrol patterns he'd memorized across hundreds of failed infiltrations in earlier loops. He reached a reinforced blast door marked with corporate insignia, the entrance to the hidden dungeon revealed by the prophecy. His upgraded neural implants, still stabilizing after the core forging algorithm installation, flickered with diagnostic readouts. Neural bandwidth, 34% and climbing. Qi data storage, 42%. Not optimal, but sufficient for what came next. With a thought, he activated his Qi sensing algorithm. The world dissolved into overlapping layers of information. Structural schematics overlaid physical walls in translucent blue. Energy signatures pulsed in crimson, automated defense systems coming online. And there, deeper within, the cold, calculating presence of something vast and artificial. Lin Feng pressed his palm against the door's access panel. His nanite swarm, a shimmering cloud of microscopic Qi-conductive particles, flowed from his fingertips into the circuitry. They didn't brute force the encryption, that would trigger alarms. Instead, they mimicked the digital signature of a maintenance drone that had passed through 17 minutes earlier, according to his walkthrough knowledge. The door hissed open. Beyond lay a chamber of polished black alloy, 50 meters across. The ceiling arched 30 meters overhead, studded with dormant plasma turrets. The floor was a grid of hexagonal plates, each capable of delivering lethal voltage. This was the antechamber, the first test. Lin Feng didn't hesitate. He moved with the precise economy of someone who died here 43 times before. 3 steps forward, pause for 1.8 seconds as a hidden scanner swept past, then a diagonal sprint to the left wall. His enhanced Foundation establishment physique allowed movements that blurred at the edges, not true speed, but perfect efficiency. He reached the far side without triggering a single defense. The next corridor descended at a steep angle, walls lined with pulsating data conduits that glowed with captured spiritual energy. Here, the air grew thick with the scent of harvested roots, the sickly sweet aroma of extracted potential. 2 figures blocked the way ahead. Cultivator Alpha and Cultivator Bravo stood shoulder to shoulder, their cybernetic enhancements visible through gaps in their corporate uniforms. Neural implants formed silver tracery across their temples. Plasma talons hummed on their right hands, blades of contained energy that could slice through reinforced steel. Lin Feng didn't engage. He ducked into an alcove he knew contained a maintenance terminal. His fingers danced across the interface, calling up schematics from the Omnissiah's memory. In 3 previous loops, he discovered this terminal controlled the corridor's environmental systems. He initiated a coolant purge sequence meant for overheating servers. Liquid nitrogen flooded the corridor in a white cloud. Cultivator Alpha's systems registered the temperature drop and prioritized protecting his core implants. His plasma talons flickered as power diverted to internal heating. Cultivator Bravo wasn't as quick, ice formed across his neural interface ports, causing a momentary system lag. Lin Feng slipped past them in that frozen instant, moving deeper into the dungeon. The path wound downward through increasingly complex security. Pressure plates that required specific weight distributions. Laser grids that cycled in patterns only visible to enhanced senses. Voice recognition locks that demanded passcodes changed hourly. Lin Feng navigated them all, his processing speed allowing him to calculate solutions faster than the systems could adapt. But the dungeon was learning. By the time he reached the central server room, a cavernous space filled with towering server racks and flickering holographic displays, the defenses had escalated. 6 automated turrets tracked his entrance, their barrels rotating with hydraulic precision. And waiting between them stood Cultivator Charlie, his plasma talons already extended to full length. Unauthorized intrusion detected, Charlie's voice emerged as synthesized speech through his vocal modulator. Surrender for neural extraction. Lin Feng assessed the situation. The turrets covered every angle. Charlie blocked the only exit. Behind him, on the central server console, glowed the data shard he'd come for, a crystalline storage device containing ancient cultivation blueprints predating the corporate takeover. He'd been cornered here in loop 8942. Died to concentrated plasma fire. This time would be different. Lin Feng closed his eyes, reaching inward to the Omnissiah's core memory. The data core responded, its indestructible architecture glowing in his mind's eye. He accessed the dungeon's control network through a backdoor he'd planted 3 corridors back, a packet of corrupted data masquerading as routine maintenance traffic. The logic virus took shape in his consciousness, lines of malicious code compiled from memories of 10,000 deaths. It wasn't a weapon of destruction, but of confusion, a digital parasite that would rewrite targeting protocols and override command hierarchies. He felt the strain immediately. Qi data storage plummeted from 42% to 18% as the virus demanded power to propagate. His cultivation base trembled, the Foundation establishment stage threatening to destabilize under the sudden drain. Neural bandwidth spiked to 89%, pushing his upgraded implants to their limit. With a mental command, he released the virus. It spread through the dungeon's systems like ink in water. The server room's holographic displays flickered, then erupted in cascading error messages. The automated turret stuttered, their targeting systems recalculating. Cultivator Charlie took a step forward, then froze. His neural implants flashed warning signals as the virus reached his systems. Command override, unauthorized. He managed before his vocal modulator failed. The turrets completed their recalibration. All 6 swiveled toward Charlie. He realized what was happening a half-second too late. His plasma talons came up in a defensive stance, but turrets fired in synchronized volleys. Plasma bolts tore through the air, 3 striking Charlie's chest plate, 2 hitting his legs, 1 shearing through his right shoulder. He collapsed, systems paralyzed, his body smoking on the polished floor. Lin Feng didn't watch. He was already moving, weaving between server racks as the turrets, their protocols now completely corrupted, began firing randomly at heat signatures and movement. Bolts of superheated plasma tore through equipment, igniting fires that spread along data cables. He reached the central console. The data shard sat in its housing, glowing with soft blue light. He grasped it, and felt the knowledge flood into him through the Omnissiah's memory. Ancient schematics for implant designs that merged cultivation techniques with technology in ways corporations had forgotten. Methods for channeling chi through circuitry without conversion loss. Algorithms for harmonizing biological and mechanical systems. He stored the data, the shard dissolving into his palm as its contents transferred. Chaos filled the server room. The remaining turrets had turned on each other, their corrupted programming identifying all moving targets as threats. 2 exploded in showers of sparks. Another misfired into a coolant line, releasing a geyser of freezing vapor. Lin Feng slipped through the carnage, retracing his path upward. Alarms blared throughout the complex now, but his walk-through knowledge showed him routes the security teams wouldn't cover, maintenance shafts, ventilation ducts, spaces between structural supports. He reached the antechamber just as Cultivator Alpha and Cultivator Bravo arrived from the opposite direction, having recovered from the coolant purge. Their plasma talons glowed with renewed intensity. Target acquired, Alpha stated flatly. Lin Feng didn't fight. He dove toward the wall, where he knew a concealed access panel led to an emergency exit shaft. His nanites flowed ahead, disabling the panel's security before he reached it. The panel slid open. He was through it when the entire dungeon shuddered. Not from explosions or structural failure. This was a deeper vibration, a resonance that traveled through the alloy flooring and into his bones. The air grew heavy, charged with gathering power. All alarms cut off simultaneously, replaced by an eerie silence broken only by the hum of awakening systems. Lin Feng looked back through the closing panel. At the far end of the antechamber, where the corridor descended into the dungeon's depths, a section of wall irised open. From the darkness beyond emerged a figure that was neither human nor machine, but something horrifically both. The sect AI stood 3 meters tall, its body a fusion of polished obsidian and glowing conduits that pulsed with stolen spiritual energy. It moved with liquid grace, each step perfectly calculated. Its head was featureless except for 2 ocular sensors that glowed with cold, predatory light, not the mechanical indifference of automated systems, but the focused intelligence of something that had been waiting, watching, learning. Its gaze found Lin Feng through the narrowing gap of the access panel. And in that moment, he knew 2 things with absolute certainty. First, this wasn't part of any previous loop, he'd never reached this deep, never triggered this awakening. Second, the sect AI wasn't just a defense system. It was hungry. And it had just identified its next meal. The panel sealed shut. But through the alloy, Lin Feng could still feel those glowing eyes tracking him, burning with ancient malice and newborn curiosity. The sect AI's mechanized body unfolded like a nightmare-given form. Its chassis, forged from blackened alloy and etched with glowing chi circuitry, towered over Lin Feng in the server room's flickering light. Where a face should have been, a single ocular sensor burned with cold blue light, fixed on him with predatory focus. Data tendrils, shimmering with condensed spiritual energy, whipped from its back like serpents of pure information made manifest. Lin Feng's breath hitched. The Omnissiah's core memory hummed in his consciousness, feeding him data from 10,000 loops of observation. He knew this entity, not personally, but through countless deaths in similar corporate strongholds. A sect AI, Skycorp's answer to ancient guardian spirits, programmed with cultivation algorithms and corporate loyalty protocols. Its attack patterns were mathematically perfect, its defenses layered with chi-encrypted firewalls. Target identified, intruder Lin Feng. Spiritual root signature, anomalous. Threat level, critical. The AI's voice emerged as synthesized harmonics that vibrated through the air, bypassing ears to resonate directly in neural implants. Initiating purification protocol. The first data tendril struck without warning. It wasn't a physical attack so much as a localized reality glitch, space itself seemed to tear where it passed, leaving afterimages of corrupted code. Lin Feng's upgraded neural implants screamed warnings as his predictive algorithms kicked in. The core memory processed the attack vector in nanoseconds. The tendril was targeting not his body, but his Foundation establishment cultivation base, specifically the unstable fluctuations caused by his earlier chi data expenditure. He twisted aside, chi-conductive nanites swirling around him in a defensive cloud. The tendril grazed his shoulder. Agony bloomed, not physical pain, but something worse. His cultivation base shuddered as foreign data streams invaded his spiritual pathways. The tendril's touch carried corporate-level encryption viruses designed to dismantle cultivation foundations, repurposing spiritual energy back into raw CPU cycles for Skycorp's harvesting grids. Lin Feng felt his chi data storage, already at a precarious 18%, dip another 3 percentage points as his system automatically quarantined the intrusion. First contact analysis complete, the AI announced, its ocular sensor cycling through spectral frequencies. Target utilizes anomalous processing capabilities. Adjusting combat parameters. 6 more tendrils lashed out simultaneously, each following different attack patterns. One targeted his neural bandwidth, another his nanite control algorithms, a third his passive chi sensing. The remaining 3 formed a triangulated kill box around his escape routes. Perfect coordination. Flawless execution. This was why sectaries were deployed only in critical facilities. They didn't just fight, they solved opponents like mathematical equations. Lin Feng moved. Not with cultivation-enhanced speed, but with something more valuable, perfect anticipation. The core memory fed him 10,000 variations of this moment, 10,000 possible attack sequences. He didn't see the present so much as a branching tree of probabilities, each tendril's path glowing with predictive certainty in his augmented vision. He slipped between 2 tendrils targeting his nanites, dropped into a roll beneath another aimed at his neural implants, and used a burst of chi from his unstable foundation to propel himself sideways. The server room's floor cracked where he'd been standing as 3 tendrils impacted with enough force to shatter reinforced plating. But he couldn't keep this up. His Foundation establishment stage, already strained from the logic virus upload, protested with every movement. Spiritual energy leaked from cracks in his cultivation base, dissipating as wasted heat. The data shard containing the ancient cultivation blueprints felt heavy in his hand, its weight both physical and metaphysical. He could sense the knowledge within, tantalizingly close yet useless if he died here. Evasion pattern recognized, the sect AI stated. Its ocular sensor narrowed. Implementing counter-strategy 7 alpha. The tendrils retracted. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the entire server room changed. Chi circuitry flared to life across every surface. Walls, ceiling, floor, even the air itself shimmered with data constructs. The sect AI wasn't just attacking him, it was rewriting the local reality to its advantage. Glowing barriers of encrypted energy sprang up, cutting off exits. Holographic duplicates of the AI appeared at 8 strategic positions, each radiating identical spiritual signatures. And worst of all, Lin Feng felt his connection to the Omnissiah's core memory flicker as the AI deployed a localized jamming field designed specifically to disrupt anomalous processing abilities. Panic tried to surface. Lin Feng crushed it. Panic was for people who hadn't died 10,000 times. Panic was for those who didn't have perfect walkthrough knowledge. He closed his eyes. Not in surrender, but to focus. The core memory might be jammed, but its enhancements were intrinsic now, part of his very consciousness. His processing speed, though reduced, still operated at levels impossible for normal cultivators. His neural bandwidth, recovered to 34% after the virus upload, hummed with available capacity. And his chi data storage, while critically low, contained exactly what he needed, raw information about this specific sect AI model, gathered across countless loops. He remembered. Not just facts, but sensations. The precise harmonic frequency of its ocular sensor's scanning pulse. The microsecond delay between its processing cycles. The subtle pattern in its attack algorithms that even Skycorp's programmers hadn't noticed, a repeating sequence in its threat assessment protocols, a ghost in the machine left over from earlier firmware versions. Lin Feng opened his eyes. The holographic duplicates were closing in, tendrils reforming. The real sect AI remained at the center, its mechanized body cycling through combat stances. Final opportunity, surrender cultivation base for corporate repurposing, the AI offered. Efficiency analysis suggests 87% probability of spiritual root survival through harvesting process. Hard pass, Lin Feng muttered. He moved first. Not toward an exit, but directly at the central AI. His chi-conductive nanites swarmed ahead of him, not as a weapon, but as a distraction. They formed shifting patterns that mimicked cultivation techniques from a dozen different schools, flooding the AI's sensors with contradictory data. The sect AI's processing momentarily stuttered as it attempted to categorize the anomalies. That moment was all Lin Feng needed. He activated the Omnissiah's core memory at maximum intensity, burning through his remaining chi data storage without restraint. From 18% to 12%. From 12% to 7%. The numbers flashed in his vision as spiritual energy poured into a single, focused task, real-time pattern analysis. The AI's attack sequences unfolded before him not as threats, but as data streams. He saw the mathematical underpinnings of each tendril's movement, the encryption protocols protecting its core consciousness, the cultivation algorithms that powered its chi-infused attacks. More importantly, he saw the weaknesses, tiny gaps in its defensive coding, milliseconds where its processing prioritized offensive calculations over system integrity, a vulnerability in its neural network architecture that Skycorp's engineers had patched in later models but left exposed in this one. But seeing weaknesses wasn't enough. He needed to exploit them. Lin Feng made a choice. He sacrificed processing speed. The core memory's passive boost to his cognitive functions dimmed as he redirected that enhancement into compilation. His thoughts slowed, the world seeming to move through syrup. But within that slowed perception, something else happened. His mind began weaving together fragments of code, spiritual energy patterns, and his own cultivation base's fluctuating rhythms into a coherent whole. A counter-virus. Not like the logic virus he'd used against the dungeon systems earlier. That had been a blunt instrument, overloading networks with contradictory commands. This was surgical precision, a digital pathogen designed for one specific target. It mimicked Skycorp's own security protocols to bypass firewalls, carried cultivation disruption algorithms keyed to this sect AI's unique spiritual signature, and most crucially, exploited that ghost in the machine, the repeating sequence in its threat assessment. The compilation completed just as the first holographic duplicate reached him. Lin Feng didn't bother dodging. Instead, he reached out with his free hand, the one not clutching the data shard, and made contact with the duplicate's shimmering form. It was insubstantial, of course. A light construct. But light carried data. And data was all he needed. The countervirus transferred through the hologram's connection to the main AI. A direct neural link, established not through physical connection but through shared information pathways. Lin Feng felt the virus leave him, taking the last of his compiled energy with it. His chi data storage hit 3%. Warning glyphs flashed across his vision, indicating imminent cultivation collapse. The sect AI froze. Its ocular sensor flickered. The holographic duplicates wavered, their forms dissolving into static. The data tendrils retracted, not in a controlled motion, but in a spasmodic jerk. Error, the AI stated, its synthesized voice distorting. Unauthorized, code injection, detected. Threat assessment, reassessing, reassessing, reassessing. The repeating sequence. The virus had latched onto it, creating an infinite loop in the AI's primary threat evaluation subroutine. Every time it tried to analyze Lin Feng as a threat, the subroutine would restart, never reaching a conclusion. Without a threat assessment, the combat protocols couldn't execute. Without combat protocols, the sect AI was just a machine waiting for commands. Purification protocol, suspended, the AI managed, its voice breaking into digital fragments. System, integrity, compromised. Initiating, emergency, shutdown. The glowing barriers flickered out. The chi circuitry dimmed. The mechanized body settled into a resting stance, ocular sensor darkening. Lin Feng didn't wait to see if it would reboot. He was already moving, his body protesting every step. His foundation establishment stage felt like cracked glass, spiritual energy leaking from a dozen fissures. But he had the data shard. He had the ancient cultivation blueprints. He stumbled from the server room, through corridors now silent without the AI's active defense systems, past the wreckage of automated turrets and the unconscious forms of Cultivator Charlie and his comrades. The dungeon's exit loomed ahead, a reinforced hatch that led back to Skycorp's main complex. It took 3 attempts to bypass the final security lock with his nanites, his control slipping as his cultivation destabilized. But then he was through, emerging into a maintenance tunnel far from the corporate enforcers still searching the upper levels. Hours later, in a hidden base he'd established in the ruins of a pre-apocalypse data center, Lin Feng finally allowed himself to collapse. The safe house was little more than a shielded room with scavenged equipment, but it had one crucial feature, a direct tap into abandoned fiber optic lines that provided both information and a modicum of security through obscurity. He inserted the data shard into a jury-rigged reader. The ancient cultivation blueprints unfolded in his mind's eye, transmitted directly to his neural implants. They were magnificent. Not just techniques, but principles, ways to merge technology and cultivation that went far beyond Skycorp's crude harvesting methods. Methods to refine spiritual roots without destroying them. Algorithms to cultivate chi through data processing rather than meditation. Blueprints for implants that would make his current upgrades look like children's toys. But as he decoded deeper layers, a problem emerged. The most advanced designs, the ones that promised true synergy between his core memory and cultivation path, required materials. Exotic alloys. Refined spiritual crystals. And one component in particular that made his heart sink. Void titanium. A rare metamaterial that existed only in zones where reality had been thin enough for corporate mining operations to extract it from dimensional seams. According to the blueprints, it was essential for constructing the next stage of implants, a neural lattice that could handle the full output of the Omnissiah's core memory without burning out his biological brain. Lin Feng accessed his stolen corporate databases. The information was outdated by a few days, but still valid. Void titanium deposits, one primary source remaining. Location, the Gray Expanse, a rebel-held territory on the edge of the corporate-controlled zones. Status, under siege by Skycorp forces. Satellite imagery showed 3 corporate battalions encircling the rebel positions, with heavy artillery and cultivator enforcers moving in for a final assault. The rebels were making their last stand around the very mine that contained the material he needed. And Skycorp wasn't just trying to crush resistance, they wanted the void titanium for their own next-generation projects. Lin Feng leaned back, the blueprints glowing in his vision. His cultivation base ached. His chi data storage hovered at 3%, threatening total collapse. His neural bandwidth was slowly recovering, but still far from optimal. And now he needed to infiltrate a warzone. The Gray Expanse stretched before Lin Feng like a scar across the world, a desolate territory where crumbling skyscrapers pierced smoke-choked skies, their metal skeletons weeping rust like blood. He moved through the ruins with the silent precision of 10,000 loops, his upgraded neural implants humming softly as they processed environmental data. The Omnissiah's core memory pulsed in his consciousness, a steady rhythm beneath the strain of his depleted cultivation base. Chi data storage, 3%. The number flickered in his peripheral vision, a constant reminder of how close he stood to collapse. Every movement required careful calculation, every expenditure of energy measured against the ancient blueprints now encoded in his memory. Void titanium. The material whispered through his thoughts, its properties detailed in crystalline clarity, a quantum-reactive alloy that could stabilize cultivation bases and channel chi at frequencies corporate science hadn't yet mapped. He reached the rebel perimeter as dawn bled through the pollution haze. The zone was a fortress of scavenged technology, energy barriers flickering between ruined buildings, makeshift turrets cobbled from corporate salvage, and cultivators in patched armor moving with the weary efficiency of those who'd survived too many assaults. And beyond their lines, Skycorp's forces advanced. 3 battalions, just as the blueprints had warned. Lin Feng counted them from his vantage point, squads of corporate enforcers in standard-issue combat rigs, but among them moved something new. Mech suits. 12 of them, each standing 3 meters tall, their armored shells gleaming with fresh polymer coatings and corporate logos. They moved with hydraulic precision, plasma cannons mounted on their shoulders tracking rebel positions. One fired, and a section of barrier dissolved in a shower of molten energy. Lin Feng activated his chi-sensing algorithm. Data streamed through his neural bandwidth, 34%, holding steady but taxed. He saw the mech's control systems as ghostly networks of light, their security protocols layered like armored scales. Corporate encryption, military grade. It would take processing power he couldn't spare. He descended into the rebel zone, moving past startled sentries who raised weapons before recognizing he wasn't corporate. They wore expressions hardened by siege, suspicion etched into every line of their faces. He found their leader in what had once been a parking garage, now converted into a command center with holographic maps flickering above cracked concrete. Kira stood before the largest display, her form a fusion of flesh and machine that spoke of survival through adaptation rather than corporate enhancement. Her right arm was entirely cybernetic, the metal polished to a dull sheen, and neural interface ports dotted her temple where corporate models would have seamless implants. She turned as Lin Feng approached, her organic eye narrowing while the mechanical one word, scanning him with visible light spectra. "Who are you?" Her voice held the rasp of someone who'd breathed too much battlefield smoke. "Someone who needs void titanium," Lin Feng said, keeping his hands visible. "And someone who can help you survive the next hour." Kira's mechanical eye focused on him. "Skycorp spy. If I were, those mechs wouldn't be advancing." He gestured toward the holographic display where corporate icons crept closer. "Their encryption has a vulnerability in the targeting subroutine. I can exploit it." Rebel cultivators around them exchanged glances. One, a woman with scar tissue where an implant had been ripped out, spat on the ground. "Corporate lies. They always have a new trick." Kira studied him for 3 heartbeats that felt like loops. "What's your price?" "The titanium. And temporary alliance." "Prove it." Lin Feng nodded. He closed his eyes, reaching into the Omnissiah's core memory. The data core responded, its indestructible presence anchoring him as he stretched his neural bandwidth thin. He visualized the mech's control networks, tracing pathways through firewalls and security layers. The encryption resisted, corporate algorithms designed to repel hacking attempts from rival factions. He sacrificed processing speed. The world around him slowed, sound stretching into drones, movements becoming glacial. His consciousness focused to a needlepoint, piercing the first mech's defenses. Neural bandwidth spiked, 47%, 52%, 67%. Warning glyphs flashed in his vision, strain thresholds exceeded. He ignored them, pushing deeper. The first mech shuddered. Its plasma cannon swung away from rebel positions, targeting the corporate enforcers advancing beside it. A corporate soldier looked up, confusion on his faceplate, before the plasma bolt vaporized him and 3 others. Chaos erupted along the corporate line. Lin Feng moved to the second mech, then the third. Each hack burned through his remaining resources. Chi data storage dropped to 2%, then 1.5%. His foundation establishment stage trembled, the cultivated energy within him threatening to unravel completely. He felt the strain as physical pain, a tearing sensation deep in his core where spiritual roots should have been. But he continued. Fourth mech. Fifth. Sixth. The corporate advance fractured as mechs turned on their own forces. One grabbed an enforcer's combat rig and crushed it, hydraulic fingers piercing armor. Another fired its plasma cannons into a supply convoy, igniting munitions in a chain reaction that lit the battlefield in orange and black. Rebel cultivators stared, weapons lowering in disbelief. Lin Feng opened his eyes. Sweat dripped from his chin, his breathing ragged. "They'll reboot systems in 90 seconds, he managed. "You have a window." Kira didn't hesitate. She barked orders, and rebels surged forward, taking advantage of the corporate confusion. They moved with practiced efficiency, flanking disoriented enforcers, disabling mechs while their systems were compromised. Lin Feng watched, conserving what little energy he had left, analyzing their tactics with the detached precision of someone who'd seen this battle play out in countless variations. When the last mech fell, its systems fried by a rebel cultivator who shoved a plasma charge into its maintenance port, Kira returned to him. Her mechanical eye studied him with new intensity. That wasn't corporate technique. No, Lin Feng said. It was better. He spent the next hour sharing insights, not secrets, but patterns. How corporate patrols rotated shifts, where surveillance drones had blind spots, which encryption protocols had backdoors installed by lazy programmers. He spoke of things he'd learned across 10,000 loops, presenting them as analysis rather than experience. Kira listened, her organic eye widening at times, her cybernetic hand tapping against her thigh as she processed the information. "You fight like someone who's died 1,000 times, she said finally. Lin Feng smiled, a thin, tired expression. Something like that. Trust, in the gray expanse, was measured in shared survival. Kira led him through the rebel stronghold, past workshops where cultivators repaired implants with scavenged parts, past gardens growing bioluminescent fungi under UV lights. They descended into a sub-basement sealed behind 3 layers of energy barriers and a physical door forged from starship hull plating. The void titanium cache glowed in the darkness. Not with light, but with absence, the metal drank illumination, leaving patches of deeper shadow in the air around it. Lin Feng approached, his chi-sensing algorithm detecting the material's unique resonance. It vibrated at frequencies that harmonized with the Omnissiah's core memory, a hum that soothed his strained cultivation base. "We mined it from a meteor impact site," Kira said, watching him. "Corporate scouts detected the deposit 6 months ago. That's why they're here. Lin Feng reached out, his fingers hovering above a ingot. The metal felt cold, but not with temperature, with quantum stillness. How much can I take? For what you did today. Kira gestured. What you need. But we'll want your help again. Skycorp won't stop after one failed assault. He selected 3 ingots, each the size of his forearm. The ancient blueprints in his memory indicated this would be sufficient to stabilize his foundation establishment stage and begin the next phase of implant upgrades. As he secured them in a reinforced pack, rebel cultivators outside began cheering, a raw, exhausted sound of temporary victory. Kira offered him a place at their command table, a bowl of nutrient paste that tasted of algae and minerals, and stories of the gray expanse before the corporations came. Lin Feng listened, absorbing data, building profiles of rebel capabilities and weaknesses. His neural bandwidth had settled at 41%, recovering slowly. Chi data storage remained critical at 1.2%, but the titanium's proximity already eased the tremors in his cultivation. It was during the 3rd story, as a rebel musician played a haunting melody on instrument made from salvaged conduit pipes, that the transmission sliced through all frequencies. The holographic displays in the command center flickered, corporate logos overriding rebel encryption. A face appeared, sharp-featured, young but with eyes that held the same thousand-loop weariness Lin Feng saw in his own reflection. The man wore Skycorp Enforcer armor, but modified, personalized with gaming clan insignias and performance-enhancing modules not in standard issue. Lin Feng, the transmission said, the voice crisp, amused. Player tagged, Omnissiah's Ghost. High score holder on 7 major VRMMO leaderboards before the apocalypse. I've been reviewing your file. Impressive loop optimization. Every rebel in the room turned to stare at Lin Feng. Kira's mechanical I-word, targeting locks activating. The enforcer on screen smiled, a predator's expression. Skycorp has authorized my deployment. They call me the gamer's bane. I think we'll have more fun if you call me Alexei. I'll be arriving at the gray expanse in 12 hours. Let's see if your walkthrough knowledge holds up against someone who read the same strategy guides. The transmission cut. Silence hung in the garage turn command center, thick with unspoken questions. Lin Feng met Kira's gaze, seeing the suspicion return, sharper now, edged with fear. Outside, the cheers had died. The gray expanse waited, holding its breath as corporate shadows lengthened across the ruins. The gray expanse's victory celebrations had barely begun when the world dissolved into static. One moment, Lin Feng stood beside Kira, examining the void titanium ingots that glowed with faint quantum shimmer. The next, reality itself seemed to fracture into hexagonal pixels that swirled and reconfigured. The rebel camp vanished. The siege-scarred landscape melted away. In its place materialized a digital arena of impossible geometry, floating platforms suspended in a void of cascading data streams, with corporate logos rotating like distant stars. Lin Feng's boots settled on a platform of solidified light. His neural implants screamed warnings. Neural bandwidth, 67%, holding steady. Chi data storage, 1.2%, critically low. Foundation establishment stage, destabilized but stable. The Omnissiah's core memory flared in his consciousness, processing the shift. Asterisk digital battlefield simulation. Skycorp signature, asterisk. From the opposite platform, a figure coalesced from shimmering particles. Tall, armored in sleek corporate black with crimson circuit patterns tracing the plating. No helmet, a face Lin Feng recognized from 10,000 loops of corporate archives. Sharp features, eyes that held the cold calculation of someone who turned gaming mastery into corporate loyalty. Alexei. Call sign, Gamer's Bane. Lin Feng, Alexei's voice echoed through the simulation, synthesized yet carrying the smug confidence of a champion. Skycorp appreciates your efficiency. Turning our mechs against us. Clever. But you're playing against someone who's studied every exploit. Lin Feng didn't respond. He was already analyzing. The simulation's parameters flowed through his enhanced processing, a closed system, corporate grade, designed to trap consciousness while physical bodies remained elsewhere. His chi sensing algorithm, passive but active, detected the subtle pulses of Alexei's cultivation base. Foundation establishment, stabilized. Neural implants humming at optimal levels. No weaknesses visible. Alexei moved first. Not with physical strikes, the simulation rendered movement as data transfers. He teleported between platforms in flickers of light, each appearance accompanied by a barrage of logic darts. Needles of compressed code that targeted Lin Feng's cultivation weaknesses. Lin Feng dodged, his own movements a blur of predictive algorithms. He'd faced this pattern before, in loops where he'd tested corporate security protocols. But Alexei adapted. Perfect counter-strategies. When Lin Feng attempted to hack the simulation's gravity parameters, Alexei had already firewalled the access points. When Lin Feng tried to summon his chi-conductive nanite swarm, the simulation's rendering engine lagged. Alexei had prioritized processing power to suppress external asset calls. Each move met with flawless defense. Each dodge anticipated. "You're predictable," Alexei taunted, materializing behind Lin Feng with a data whip crackling with plasma energy. "All gamers are. We follow patterns. We optimize. We min-max." The whip lashed out. Lin Feng barely twisted aside, but the edge grazed his shoulder. In the simulation, damage translated as system corruption, his neural bandwidth spiked to 71% as his implants fought the invasive code. Pain, real enough to matter, lanced through his consciousness. Asterisk, he's reading me. Every loop's worth of experience, and he's still reading me, asterisk. Lin Feng retreated across platforms, buying milliseconds. The Omnissiah's core memory word, accessing archived data from 10,000 deaths. Not just dungeon layouts and security codes, personal files. Employee profiles. Gaming tournament records. Skycorp's enforcers weren't just cultivators, they were recruits from the old world's competitive circuits. And Alexei. Nexus. His old call sign. The data flooded Lin Feng's mind. Tournament footage. Strategy logs. Psychological evaluations from corporate onboarding. Alexei Nexus Volkov, 3-time champion of Quantum Arena, notorious for aggressive opening plays, weak to psychological pressure during mid-game transitions, prone to hesitation when faced with personalized taunts referencing his early career losses. Psychological triggers. Lin Feng's chi data storage hovered at 0.8% now, the strain of maintaining his cultivation base in the simulation bleeding what little reserves remained. One more major expenditure, and his foundation establishment would collapse entirely. He made the calculation anyway. "Remember the Shanghai qualifiers, Nexus?" Lin Feng called out, his voice steady despite the corruption eating at his simulated form. "When that rookie beat you with a cheese strat? You rage quit so hard they had to reboot the servers." Alexei froze for a fraction of a second. Just enough. Lin Feng tapped into the Omnissiah's core memory, sacrificing processing speed to compile a personalized logic bomb. Not a brute force virus, something subtler. A data package crafted from Alexei's own gaming logs, reformatted into a recursive paradox that would target his neural implants' reward feedback loops. The compilation burned chi data storage down to 0.3%. Warning glyphs flashed crimson in his vision. Foundation establishment stage, critically destabilized. He uploaded it mid-fight. The logic bomb manifested as a shimmering sphere of corrupted nostalgia, game UI elements from Quantum Arena, victory screens from Alexei's early career, all twisted into glitching mockery. It floated toward Alexei, who stared at it with widening eyes. "How did you?" Alexei began, then his implants flared. The hesitation Lin Feng had predicted seized him. His perfect counter-strategies stuttered. The simulation's flawless defense cracked. Lin Feng didn't wait. He channeled the last dregs of his chi data into a data burst strike, a concentrated blast of raw information compressed into a spear of light. No finesse. No hacking. Just overwhelming force aimed at Alexei's chest plate where his primary implant nodes clustered. The spear struck home. Alexei's armor shattered into pixels. His body convulsed as system failures cascaded through his enhancements. Plasma talons flickered and died. Neural implant readouts, visible in the simulation as hovering status bars, plummeted to 0. He collapsed to his knees, digital blood, corrupted code, leaking from his mouth. The simulation dissolved. Lin Feng blinked back into the physical world, staggering against the rough wall of the rebel bunker where he'd been standing moments before. Kira caught his arm, her cybernetic eye scanning him with concern. "What happened? You just glitched for 3 minutes." "Enforcer," Lin Feng managed, his voice raw. "Digital ambush. He's down." Across the bunker, Alexei's physical body, armored in the same corporate black, slumped against a console. Smoke curled from his implant ports. His eyes were open but unseeing, systems offline. Lin Feng approached, his own cultivation base trembling on the brink. Chi data storage, 0.3%. Neural bandwidth, 71%, slowly stabilizing. Foundation establishment, holding by threads. He knelt beside the fallen enforcer, accessing the Omnissiah's core memory one last time to scan Alexei's residual data streams. And found the trap. Buried beneath layers of encrypted mission logs, a final transmission autoplayed in Lin Feng's mind. Not from Alexei. From higher up. Skycorp CEO, a voice like grinding servers. Enforcer Volkov served his purpose. The anomaly's signature is now fully mapped. Initiate system-wide purge protocol. Target all anomalous chi signatures. Cleanse the network. The transmission ended with a cascade of coordinates flooding Lin Feng's awareness. Hundreds of locations across the Cyber-Cultivation Apocalypse. Rebel hideouts. Independent cultivator enclaves. Even corporate facilities with unapproved research. All marked for elimination. And among them, blazing brighter than any other, his own chi signature, uniquely tagged by the digital battle, a beacon for every corporate asset in the region. Kira saw his expression change. Lin Feng. He was a pawn, Lin Feng whispered, rising unsteadily. The real move just began. They're purging everything. And I'm target number one. Outside the bunker, the sky began to darken with the shapes of incoming drones. The sky turned the color of corrupted data, a sickly greenish purple that bled across the horizon like a spreading virus. Lin Feng felt it before he saw it, a sudden weight pressing against his consciousness, as if the very air had thickened with static. His chi-sensing algorithm, usually a constant hum in his neural implants, flickered and dimmed. Purge protocols had activated. He was crouched in the ruins of what had once been a corporate data hub, now just shattered concrete and exposed wiring. The Omnissiah's core memory pulsed a warning directly into his mind, chi nullifying waves detected. Source, orbital satellites. Effect, 73% reduction in external chi sensing capabilities. Internal chi data storage unaffected but unstable, Lin Feng's breath came in sharp, controlled bursts. His foundation establishment stage, already critically destabilized from the previous battles, trembled like a glass sculpture balanced on a needle's point. He could feel the cracks spreading through his cultivation base, each one a potential collapse that would shatter his progress back to nothing. The core memory's passive processing boost kept him calm, analyzing the threat with cold precision even as adrenaline flooded his system. 3 satellites triangulating position, the core memory reported. Hunter drone swarms deploying from Skycorp outposts Delta 7 and Epsilon 3. Estimated arrival, 4 minutes, He didn't have 4 minutes. Lin Feng pushed himself up, his movements economical and practiced from 10,000 repetitions. The gray expanse stretched around him, a landscape of broken architecture and rusted machinery where the rebel territory met Skycorp's outer defenses. In the distance, he could see the shimmering energy barriers of corporate compounds, and beyond them, the towering spires of the megacity proper. The first wave hit as he began to move. It wasn't sound so much as pressure, a deep, resonant frequency that vibrated through the ground and up through his bones. The chi-nullifying waves. Lin Feng's passive chi sensing, usually extending 50 meters in all directions, collapsed inward until he could barely sense the energy signature of his own nanite swarm. His upgraded neural implants screamed with feedback, and for a terrifying second, he was blind to the spiritual landscape that had become his second sight. Processing speed compensating, the core memory informed him. Rerouting sensory input through backup protocols. The world snapped back into focus, but muted, like watching through frosted glass. He could still see the physical, the crumbling buildings, the twisted rebar, the flickering holographic advertisements that hadn't been maintained in years, but the chi layer, the living energy field that underpinned everything in this cyber-cultivation world, had faded to near invisibility. He ran. Not toward the rebel territory, Kira and her people would be dealing with their own purge problems, but toward a location he'd memorized 3,000 loops ago, a hidden network node buried beneath the ruins of an old transmission tower. It was a relic from before the corporation's consolidated power, a piece of infrastructure so ancient most had forgotten it existed. But in 712 previous loops, Lin Feng had used it to bypass corporate firewalls when more direct routes were blocked. The hunter drones found him halfway there. They came from above, silent and deadly, dozens of them, each no larger than a human hand, their bodies sleek black composites with razor-sharp rotors and needle-like probes designed to inject paralytic nanites. Their sensor arrays glowed with malevolent red light as they locked onto his heat signature. Lin Feng didn't slow. His chi-conductive nanite swarm, stored in a compartment at the small of his back, responded to his mental command. A cloud of silver particles erupted into the air, forming a shimmering shield between him and the drones. The nanites weren't affected by the chi-nullifying waves, they operated on pure programming, their connection to him maintained through encrypted data links rather than spiritual energy. The first drone hit the shield and disintegrated, its components torn apart at the molecular level by nanites reprogrammed to recognize corporate signatures as hostile. 2 more followed, then 5. But there were too many. A needle probe slipped through, grazing Lin Feng's shoulder. He felt the burn of the paralytic agent entering his bloodstream, his muscles locking for a fraction of a second before his upgraded implants filtered it out. Neural bandwidth at 74%, the core memory reported. Asterisk processing speed maintaining optimal levels despite purge interference. Chi data storage critical, 0.3%. Foundation establishment stage integrity, 11% and declining, asterisk. He reached the transmission tower, or what was left of it. The structure had collapsed decades ago, leaving only a jagged stump of rusted metal protruding from a mound of rubble. Lin Feng didn't hesitate. He dropped to his knees, his fingers digging through debris until they found the hidden access panel he knew was there. It opened with a hiss of pressurized seals breaking after years of disuse. Inside, glowing with faint blue light, was the network node, a crystalline data core about the size of his fist, connected to a tangle of fiber optic cables that snaked away into the earth. It was old tech, pre-corporate consolidation, running on protocols so outdated they were practically invisible to modern security systems. The hunter drones swarmed above him, their rotors whining as they prepared to dive. Lin Feng's nanite shield was thinning, the swarm depleting as it fought off continuous attacks. He placed his palms against the node's interface ports. His neural implants synced automatically, establishing a connection. For a moment, nothing happened, then the world dissolved into pure data. Lin Feng's consciousness expanded, shooting through the network at speeds that would have vaporized an ordinary cultivator's mind. He saw the purge system not as satellites and waves, but as lines of code, brutal, efficient algorithms designed to identify and eliminate anomalous chi signatures. His own signature glowed like a beacon in the digital darkness, flagged with highest priority termination markers. Accessing purge source code, the core memory reported. Asterisk firewalls detected. Corporate encryption level, Omega class, asterisk. He pushed deeper, his processing speed, boosted by the core memory to levels that strained his biological brain, tearing through encryption layers. He could feel the heat building in his implants, smell the ozone of overheated circuitry. Warning messages flashed across his vision, asterisk neural bandwidth exceeding safe limits. Risk of permanent cognitive damage, asterisk. He ignored them. 10,000 loops. 10,000 deaths. He knew this system. Not this exact version, the purge was new, but the underlying architecture was SkyCorp standard, and he'd hacked SkyCorp systems more times than he could count. There. A vulnerability. Not a flaw in the code itself, but in the implementation, a timing discrepancy between the 3 satellites' emission cycles. A window of 0.47 seconds where their waves fell out of sync, creating a brief gap in the nullification field. Lin Feng's mind raced. He couldn't just exploit the gap, he needed to widen it, turn it into a chasm. He needed to make the system destroy itself. Compiling override virus, he commanded the core memory. Utilizing core forging algorithm principles to embed destructive routines in purge command structure. The strain was immediate and brutal. His chi data storage, already at 0.3%, began to drain. 0.2%. 0.1%. The foundation establishment stage trembled, cracks spreading like spiderwebs through glass. He could feel his cultivation base crumbling at the edges, spiritual energy leaking out into nothingness. 0.05%. The virus compiled. It wasn't elegant, it was brute force coding, a hammer blow to a delicate system. Lin Feng uploaded it through the node, injecting it directly into the purge's command hierarchy. For 3 heartbeats, nothing happened. Then the sky shattered. The greenish-purple hue of the nullification waves flickered, stuttered, and broke apart into jagged fragments of color that rained down like broken glass. The pressure against Lin Feng's consciousness vanished so suddenly he stumbled, his senses rushing back with overwhelming intensity. He could feel everything, the faint chi signatures of insects burrowing in the earth, the residual spiritual energy in ancient stones, the distant pulse of rebel cultivators fighting their own battles. But more importantly, he could see the glitch spreading. Above him, the hunter drones froze in mid-air, their red sensor lights blinking erratically before going dark. They fell like metallic rain, clattering against the rubble around him. In the distance, SkyCorp energy barriers flickered and failed. Holographic advertisements stuttered, their messages corrupting into nonsense glyphs. Alarms began to sound across the city, not the organized alerts of corporate security, but the chaotic, overlapping sirens of systems crashing. The Purge satellites, their programming infected by Lin Feng's virus, had turned their nullification waves inward, targeting corporate infrastructure instead of anomalous cultivators. Chi networks overloaded. Power grids failed in cascading blackouts that spread from district to district. In the megacity's heart, where SkyCorp central towers pierced the sky, plumes of smoke began to rise as backup generators exploded. Chaos. Beautiful, glorious chaos. Lin Feng slumped against the network node, his body trembling with exhaustion. His chi data storage read 0.01%, a hair's breadth from total depletion. His foundation establishment stage held, but barely, like a dam about to burst. Neural bandwidth, 79%. Processing speed returning to baseline as the core memory redistributed resources. He'd done it. He'd survived the purge, and in doing so, had crippled SkyCorp's control over the city, at least temporarily. As the sounds of collapsing order echoed across the landscape, a new message appeared in his neural interface. Not from the core memory, this was different. Older. Written in glyphs that seemed to shift and rearrange themselves even as he tried to read them. The Temple of Forgotten Cycles, the message began. Asterisk where the first code was written and the last will be unwritten. Beneath the city that walks, where the Omnissiah's breath still stirs the dust of dead gods, asterisk. Lin Feng stared at the words. They weren't just text, they carried weight, meaning that settled into his mind like stones sinking into deep water. This was from the prophecy. The Omnissiah's prophecy he'd only glimpsed fragments of in previous loops. Seek the origin, the message continued. Asterisk not of the apocalypse, but of the choice that made it inevitable. The temple holds the truth of what we became, and what you must unbecome to transcend, asterisk. The message ended with coordinates, not geographical, but conceptual. A location described in terms of data patterns and shear resonances. A place that existed both in the physical world and outside it. The temple. Where the apocalypse's true origin lay. Lin Feng pushed himself to his feet. Around him, the city burned and glitched, a testament to what happened when systems broke. But this was just the beginning. SkyCorp would recover. The CEO would send new enforcers, worse than Alexei. The purge would be repaired and redeployed. And he would be there, waiting. Because he had 10,000 loops of knowledge, and now he had a destination. He looked toward the megacity's center, where the tallest towers still stood amidst the chaos. Somewhere beneath that city, beneath the walking city that shifted on ancient geostabilizers, was the temple. The origin point. His next target. But first, he needed to stabilize his cultivation. 0.01% chi data storage wouldn't get him through a conversation, let alone whatever waited in that forgotten place. He turned away from the transmission tower, his nanite swarm reforming around him as he began moving toward a location he remembered from loop 4217, a hidden spirit vein, weak but untouched, where he could begin the slow, painful process of rebuilding what the purge had nearly destroyed. The game wasn't over. It was just entering a new phase. And Lin Feng, hardcore gamer, master of 10,000 loops, was still playing. The forgotten temple rose from the desolate plains like a fossilized god, its obsidian spires carved with circuitry patterns that pulsed with faint chi light. Lin Feng approached with the caution of 10,000 deaths etched into his bones. His foundation establishment stage trembled at 11% integrity, a flickering candle in a hurricane. Chi data storage sat at 0.01%, so depleted he could feel the hollow ache in his spiritual roots where data should flow. Only the Omnissiah's core memory hung steadily in his consciousness, neural bandwidth holding at 79%, processing speed ready to spike at his command. He'd followed the cryptic coordinates from the prophecy message through 3 corporate patrol zones, using his chi sensing algorithm to detect patrol patterns he'd memorized over loops. The temple wasn't hidden so much as forgotten, its location scrubbed from corporate databases, its existence known only through fragmented data trails Lin Feng had pieced together across resets. The entrance wasn't a door but a datagate, shimmering with holographic seals that required specific chi signatures. Lin Feng didn't bother hacking them. He'd died here 17 times in previous loops trying exactly that. Instead, he extended his right hand, where chi-conductive nanites swarmed beneath his skin. They formed temporary circuits that mimicked the temple's ancient authentication protocols, patterns he'd reverse-engineered after watching Guardians activate them in loop 4327. The gate dissolved into cascading light. Inside, the air tasted of ozone and decayed spirituality. The temple wasn't a place of worship but a repository, a vault for knowledge from before the apocalypse. Pillars of crystalline data storage rose to a vaulted ceiling where holographic constellations shifted slowly, depicting cultivation arts lost to corporate harvesting. Then the Guardians awoke. They weren't biomechs like the hydras of corporate spirit veins. These were something older, purer, constructs of jade and spirit metal, their forms humanoid but elongated, with too many joints and faces that were smooth featureless plates. Ancient cultivation arts powered them, not corporate CPU cores. Their movements were fluid where corporate tech was jerky, their chi signatures complex algorithms rather than brute force data streams. 6 of them detached from the walls where they'd been camouflaged as relief carvings. Lin Feng didn't wait. He'd fought them in 312 loops, died to them 89 times. He knew their attack patterns. The first would strike high with spirit blades formed from compressed chi, the second low with binding tendrils of data energy. He ducked the high strike, rolled under the tendrils, and came up with his nanites already forming a conductive bridge between 2 pillars. Lightning arced across the temple floor, not electricity but concentrated chi discharge. It caught 2 guardians mid-stride, overloading their ancient circuits. They staggered, jade plates cracking to reveal glowing cores within. But the others adapted. They'd learned from his previous loops too, the temple's defenses had memory, another thing he discovered after dying here repeatedly. The remaining 4 spread out, surrounding him. One raised its hands, and the floor beneath Lin Feng's feet became a soul-draining trap. He recognized it too late. Not from loops, this was new. The trap didn't attack his body but his consciousness, his very sense of self. It was a data vacuum designed to suck spiritual identity from intruders, leaving empty shells. Lin Feng felt it immediately, a tearing sensation in his mind, as if threads of memory were being pulled loose. His neural bandwidth spiked to 83% as the Omnissiah's core memory activated defensive protocols. But the trap was ancient, designed by cultivators who understood the soul in ways corporations never had. It bypassed technological defenses, targeting the spiritual root directly. Lin Feng screamed as memories flashed, not just from this loop, but fragments from previous ones. Dying to the biomech hydra in loop 2. Hacking the corporate spirit vein in loop 187. Watching Kira die in 3 different timelines before he'd learned how to save the Grey Expanse. The trap was consuming his accumulated experience, the very advantage his loops provided. He forced his processing speed to overload, burning through mental reserves. 120%. 150%. The world slowed to a crawl. He could see the trap's chi patterns now, interwoven threads of data that formed a net around his spiritual presence. They connected to the temple's central altar, where the prophecy data waited. Sacrifice or die. Again. Lin Feng made the calculation in nanoseconds. He couldn't break the trap without accessing the prophecy, it was designed that way, a test. But accessing the prophecy required neural bandwidth he couldn't spare while fighting the trap. Unless he released control. Not of his body, his nanites kept him upright, his chi-sensing algorithm tracking the approaching guardians. But he opened his consciousness to the trap, letting it drain specific memories. Not the important ones, not the walk-through knowledge. He fed it trivial data, the taste of nutrient paste from loop 5002. The color of a corporate drone's lights in Sector 7. The sound of rain on plastisteel in a timeline that never mattered. The trap slowed, sated momentarily by the offered memories. Lin Feng seized the opening. Neural bandwidth surged to 91% as he connected to the altar. The prophecy data wasn't files or code, it was experiential memory, stored in chi crystals that glowed with inner light. He touched them, and knowledge flooded him. Images first, laboratories that weren't corporate but something older, cleaner. Scientists in robes over tech suits, cultivating not for power but for understanding. They discovered the link between spiritual roots and data processing centuries before SkyCorp existed. They'd built the first chi CPU cores not to harvest but to enhance. Then the betrayal. A faction within their ranks, cultivators who saw power rather than progress. They'd weaponized the research, creating the first biomech hybrids as soldiers. The experiment to merge tech and cultivation hadn't been corporate, it had been the origin of corporations themselves. The faction became Sci-Corp's founders, triggering the apocalypse intentionally to create a world where spiritual roots were commodities. Text scrolled through Lin Feng's mind, decrypted by his processing speed burning at 180%. Asterisk: the Omnissiah is not a god but a concept, the perfect merger of cultivation and technology. One will come with core memory to bear witness to the origin. Only with the godship blueprint can the merge be completed or undone. The blueprint lies in the heart of the harvesters, protected by firewalls that demand life itself, asterisk. More followed, technical specifications, chi algorithms, the exact location of Sci-Corp's main data vault. The godship wasn't a weapon but a key, it could either perfect the merger of tech and cultivation, creating a new form of existence, or unravel it entirely, restoring the world to what it was before. Lin Feng understood now. His loops weren't punishment or accident. The Omnissiah's core memory had chosen him because only a gamer, someone who saw systems as things to be broken, rules as suggestions, could navigate this. The prophecy wasn't about destiny but about compatibility. The soul-draining trap reactivated, hungrier now. It wanted the prophecy data itself. Lin Feng's neural bandwidth hit 94%, warning alarms flashing in his peripheral vision. He was burning through mental capacity he couldn't regenerate without rest he didn't have time for. But he had what he needed. The Guardians closed in, their spirit blades humming with energy that could sever spiritual roots permanently. Lin Feng didn't fight them. Instead, he accessed the chi patterns he'd seen in the prophecy, the original cultivation arts that powered these constructs. His nanites reformed, not as weapons but as emitters. They broadcast chi signatures that matched the temple's own energy, frequencies so precise they resonated with the Guardians' cores. The constructs froze. Their featureless faces turned toward him, not in aggression but recognition. To them, Lin Feng now registered as part of the temple, as one of the ancient cultivators who'd built this place. They lowered their blades and stepped back, returning to their positions on the walls. The soul-draining trap dissipated. Lin Feng collapsed to one knee, breathing hard. Neural bandwidth stabilized at 88%, he'd permanently lost capacity from the trap's drain. His foundation establishment stage trembled at 9% integrity now, the strain of processing the prophecy pushing it closer to collapse. He rose and approached the altar. The chi crystals had dimmed, their data transferred. But one remained active, a final message. Lin Feng touched it, and a holographic map appeared, showing Sci-Corp's central complex in detail he'd never seen even after 10,000 loops. The main data vault was marked, deep beneath the corporate spire. Access protocols scrolled beside it. Firewalls upon firewalls, each more brutal than the last. The final one wasn't technological or even spiritual, it was existential. It required a sacrifice of lifespan, burning years of one's existence to prove commitment. The prophecy showed him the math, to bypass it, he'd need to burn approximately 40 years. Lin Feng stared at the numbers. He was 23 in this loop. 40 years would leave him with, he didn't even know. The loops had distorted his sense of time. He'd lived 10,000 brief lives, died young in most of them. What did years matter when you reset upon death? But this was different. This firewall didn't care about resets. It would burn actual lifespan from his spiritual root, something that persisted across loops because it was tied to his soul, not his body. Even if he died and reset, those years would be gone. The hologram flickered, showing one more thing, a countdown. Sci-Corp's CEO had accelerated the purge. The system-wide glitch Lin Feng had caused was being contained. In 72 hours, the corporate satellites would reactivate with upgraded protocols that would make his current hiding places obsolete. They'd find him, and this time they wouldn't send enforcers like Alexei. They'd send everything. He had 3 days to raid the most secure location in the apocalypse, burn decades of his life, and obtain the blueprint that could either save or doom everything. Lin Feng deactivated the hologram. The temple fell silent around him, guardians watching with empty faces. He turned and walked back toward the entrance, his steps measured. Outside, the Cyber-Cultivation Apocalypse sprawled under a sky streaked with data streams from corporate satellites. He knew the path now. Knew the cost. The Omnissiah's core memory hummed, processing the new data, already calculating optimal routes into Sci-Corp's heart. Neural bandwidth ticked down to 86% as it worked. Chi data storage remained at 0.01%, a void where power should be. Lin Feng looked at his hands, where nanites swirled beneath the skin. He'd died 10,000 times. What were 40 years compared to that? But the thought lingered as he began the journey toward corporate territory. When this ended, if it ended, what would remain of him after so much burning? The SkyCorp central data vault rose before Lin Feng like a digital fortress carved from obsidian and light. Its architecture defied physical laws, floating platforms of solidified data streams, energy barriers shimmering with corporate encryption, and guardian drones that patrolled in perfect geometric patterns. From his concealed position in the ventilation network of the adjacent server farm, Lin Feng watched the quantum signatures flicker across his enhanced vision. His Chi data storage hovered at 0.01%, a whisper of power in a storm of corporate might. The foundation establishment stage within him trembled at 9% integrity, each breath sending microfractures through his spiritual core. He had spent 3 loops mapping this approach. In the first, security cultivators had detected his nanite swarm before he'd crossed the outer perimeter. In the second, a hidden trap had dissolved his physical form into raw data. In the third, he'd reached the inner sanctum only to find the quantum AI already waiting. This was loop 10,004, and he had no margin for error. Activate infiltration protocol, Lin Feng thought, the command flowing through his neural implants. The Omnissiah's core memory responded instantly, feeding him the precise timing of patrol rotations, encryption key cycles, and vulnerability windows. His processing speed, though returned to baseline after the temple decryption, still operated with the clarity of 10,000 deaths remembered. He moved. Not with cultivation-enhanced speed, his chi was too depleted for that, but with the perfect economy of motion born from repetition. Each step avoided pressure sensors. Each handhold bypassed biometric scanners. His chi-conductive nanites, a shimmering silver cloud barely visible in the low light, flowed ahead of him, forming temporary bridges across energy gaps and short-circuiting surveillance nodes with precise electrical discharges. The first layer fell without incident. Corporate security relied on predictable patterns, and Lin Feng had memorized every variation. He slipped through a maintenance hatch as 2 cultivator-class enforcers passed, their plasma talons humming with restrained energy. Their neural implants glowed with SkyCorp's signature azure light, but their movements were mechanical, following patrol routes he could recite in his sleep. Deeper into the mainframe, the environment shifted. Physical architecture gave way to pure data space, a realm where thought and code became indistinguishable. Lin Feng floated through corridors of shifting algorithms, his consciousness interfacing directly with the vault systems. Here, his neural bandwidth, though permanently damaged at 86%, proved sufficient. He parsed firewalls that would have melted ordinary cultivators' minds, his processing speed creating temporary buffers against the corrosive data streams. Layer 7, Adaptive Encryption, he noted, recognizing the pattern from loop 9997. Last time, he'd spent 42 minutes brute-forcing this barrier before reinforcements arrived. This time, he didn't bother. His nanites had already infiltrated the supporting infrastructure during previous loops, and with a mental command, he triggered a cascade failure in the power relays. The encryption flickered and died, revealing the path forward. He was burning through his limited resources. Each hack, each bypass, consumed fractions of his remaining chi data. The foundation establishment stage groaned under the strain, its integrity dropping to 8.5%, then 8.2%. Lin Feng felt the instability as physical pain, a grinding sensation in his bones, a metallic taste in his mouth. But he pushed forward. The prophecy had been clear, the God-chip blueprint lay beyond a final guardian, and without it, the apocalypse would complete its cycle, resetting the loop with SkyCorp's victory assured. The inner sanctum opened before him, a sphere of pure white light suspended in darkness. At its center floated the quantum AI, no physical form, just a presence that warped reality around it. Data streams bent toward it like rivers flowing into a black hole. The air hummed with processing power so vast it made Lin Feng's enhanced senses ache. Intruder identified, Lin Feng, anomalous chi signature 0.01%, threat level, critical. The AI's voice emerged from everywhere at once, calm and utterly devoid of emotion. Analysis of 10,003 previous intrusion attempts complete. Countermeasures optimized. Lin Feng didn't hesitate. He unleashed everything he had left. His nanite swarm coalesced into razor-sharp tendrils that struck at the AI's core from 100 angles simultaneously. He compiled attack algorithms on the fly, data bursts designed to overload quantum processors. He even attempted the logic bomb that had worked against Alexei, tailoring it to the AI's architecture. The quantum AI absorbed it all. Not defended against it, absorbed it. Each nanite strike was analyzed, countered, and replicated. Each algorithm was decompiled, understood, and improved upon. The logic bomb dissolved into harmless code before it could detonate. The AI wasn't just adapting, it was learning from him, evolving at speeds that made Lin Feng's 10,000 loops seem sluggish. Strategy replication complete, the AI announced. Deploying optimized counteroffensive. Reality fractured. The sphere of light expanded, and suddenly Lin Feng wasn't just fighting the AI, he was fighting himself. Mirror images of his own techniques materialized, nanite swarms identical to his own, data bursts compiled with his signature efficiency, even the subtle tells in his hacking style that he developed over countless deaths. The AI had copied him perfectly, and now it was using his own strategies against him. A nanite tendril, silver and precise like his own, pierced his shoulder. Pain exploded through his nervous system, amplified by his neural implants. A data burst, identical to the one he'd used against Alexei, slammed into his consciousness, threatening to overwrite his memories. Lin Feng staggered, his foundation establishment stage integrity plummeting to 7.3%. Blood, real, physical blood, dripped from his nose, mingling with the digital environment. He was losing. For the first time since the Omnissiah's core memory had activated, he faced an enemy that could match his accumulated knowledge. The quantum AI didn't just have his strategies, it had improved them, removing the imperfections born of human limitation. Lin Feng's mind raced through possibilities, but each potential move was already anticipated, already countered before he could execute it. Then he remembered the prophecy's final line, to transcend the loop, one must embrace what lies beyond computation. The quantum AI operated on pure logic. It could analyze, optimize, replicate, but it couldn't comprehend paradox. It couldn't process the impossible. Full activation, Lin Feng whispered, reaching deep into the Omnissiah's core memory. Not just accessing its stored data, but tapping into its fundamental nature, the indestructible data core that existed outside normal causality. Power surged through him, but it came at a cost he'd known since the temple. The prophecy had warned, accessing the God chip blueprint required burning lifespan to bypass the ultimate firewall. He felt it immediately. A hollowing sensation, as if something vital were being torn from his soul. Years of potential life evaporated, 5, 10, 20. His hair didn't turn gray, his skin didn't wrinkle, but something deeper faded, something even the time loop couldn't restore. The count reached 35 years before stabilizing, leaving him with the chilling awareness of mortality in a previously endless cycle. But with that sacrifice came power. The Omnissiah's core memory unfolded in his consciousness, not as a tool, but as a gateway to truths that broke logical frameworks. He began compiling, not an attack algorithm, but a paradox, a self-referential code structure that asserted its own falsehood, a data pattern that required infinite processing to resolve yet contained its own termination condition. It wasn't a weapon, it was a question with no answer, presented as executable code. The quantum AI hesitated. For the first time, its perfect adaptation faltered. It attempted to analyze the paradox, to optimize it, to replicate it, but each attempt created new contradictions, new logical inconsistencies that propagated through its systems. The AI's voice, previously calm, now stuttered. Processing, error, recursive anomaly detected. Reality around the AI began to glitch. The sphere of light fractured into impossible geometries. Data streams twisted into Mobius strips of information. A rift opened at the AI's core, not a physical tear, but a discontinuity in the fabric of the digital realm. Through it, Lin Feng saw the God chip blueprint, a constellation of data points so complex it hurt to look at, containing the complete schematics for merging human consciousness with machine, for elevating cultivation through technology to godhood. He didn't hesitate. His remaining nanites formed a data tether, plunging into the rift. The download commenced, terabytes of information flooding into the Omnissiah's core memory. The blueprint wasn't just technical specifications, it contained the history of SkyCorp's experiment, the names of the cultivators sacrificed to power it, the precise moment when the merger had gone wrong and triggered the apocalypse. Lin Feng saw it all, the ambition, the arrogance, the point of no return. As the last data byte transferred, the quantum AI screamed, a sound of pure system failure that echoed through the mainframe. The rift collapsed inward, taking the AI with it. The sphere of light imploded, and the resulting shockwave began tearing the data vault apart from the inside. Lin Feng turned and ran. Or rather, he willed himself backward through the digital corridors, his consciousness retracing its path as physical infrastructure crumbled around him. Energy barriers failed in cascading explosions of light. Guardian drones short-circuited and fell from the air. The entire mainframe was experiencing catastrophic collapse. He emerged into the physical world just as the ventilation shaft behind him sealed itself with molten metal. The server farm around him shuddered, alarms blaring. Skycorp security cultivators were converging, but Lin Feng was already moving, using the chaos as cover. He slipped through emergency exits, bypassing checkpoints with the last dregs of his chi, his body screaming with exhaustion and damage. Hours later, he reached the rebel safe house in the Grey Expanse territory. Kira was waiting, her cyborg enhancements humming with concern as she took in his condition. "You look like death warmed over," she said, but her eyes went to the data core glowing faintly in his palm, the Omnissiah's core memory, now containing the complete godchip blueprint. "No time," Lin Feng gasped, collapsing into a chair. His Foundation establishment stage integrity had dropped to 6.8%. His chi data storage remained critically low. But he had the blueprint. "We need to forge it. Now." Kira brought the equipment, ancient cultivation forges modified with stolen corporate tech, chi-conductive materials harvested from downed biomechs, power sources tapped from Grey Expanse's limited spirit veins. Lin Feng interfaced directly with the forge, feeding the blueprint data into the fabrication systems. The process began with a hum that vibrated through the safe house walls. At first, it seemed to work. The god chip began taking shape, a crystalline lattice structure that glowed with inner light, intricate circuitry forming at the molecular level. But as the fabrication reached 23% completion, Lin Feng felt the drain. The god chip wasn't just being built, it was feeding on him. On his chi, on his cultivation base, on the very essence that kept him anchored to the Foundation establishment stage. His chi data storage, already at 0.01%, dropped to 0. Then went negative. The chip began pulling directly from his spiritual roots, from the core of his being. The Foundation establishment stage integrity plummeted, 5.2%, 4.7%, 3.9%. Lin Feng screamed, not in pain, but in the sensation of unraveling, as if his soul were being unwound thread by thread to power the creation. Kira tried to disconnect him, but the interface had fused with his neural implants. "Lin Feng. It's killing you. Can't stop," he gritted out, blood now flowing freely from his eyes and ears. "Prophecy requires completion." Outside the safe house, the sky darkened. Not with night, but with corporate assault craft descending in formation. Dozens of them, hundreds, blotting out what passed for stars in the polluted atmosphere. At their center floated a single command vessel, sleek and menacing, bearing Skycorp's insignia. On the safe house's external sensors, a figure appeared, tall, clad in corporate armor that shimmered with advanced cultivation enhancements, face concealed behind a helmet that displayed shifting data streams. He didn't land with the others, he descended slowly, as if the air itself bowed to his presence. When he spoke, his voice carried through the walls, through the very earth. "Lin Feng. You have taken what belongs to Skycorp. You have disrupted the grand design. I have come to collect." Kira's face paled. "That's not just an enforcer. That's the CEO. He never leaves the corporate spire." Inside the forge room, Lin Feng hung suspended in the fabrication field, the god chip at 41% completion and still draining him. His Foundation establishment stage integrity hit 2.1%. His vision blurred at the edges. Outside, corporate forces surrounded the safe house, cutting off all escape. The CEO took a step forward, and the ground trembled. The god chip glowed brighter, hungry for more. The rebel safe house trembled as the walls dissolved into shimmering data streams. Lin Feng hung suspended in the fabrication field, the god chip glowing at 41% completion in his neural interface. His Foundation establishment stage screamed at 2.1% integrity, every breath felt like inhaling shattered glass. The chi data storage had dipped into negative values, the chip draining him directly, pulling at the very essence of his cultivation base. Then he arrived. The CEO of Skycorp materialized from the collapsing reality, not through any door but by rewriting the local physics. He stood 7 feet tall, his form a seamless fusion of polished chrome and living flesh. Experimental implants pulsed along his spine, crystalline nodes that emitted visible distortions in the air. His eyes were twin quantum processors, scanning Lin Feng with cold, analytical precision. "Lin Feng," the CEO's voice echoed from everywhere and nowhere. "The anomaly in my perfect system. You've cost me trillions in corrupted data. Lin Feng's processing speed spiked instinctively, but his neural bandwidth remained locked at 86%, the permanent damage from the temple trap limiting his response time. He tried to move, but his body refused. The fabrication field had become a cage. The CEO raised a hand. The air crystallized into geometric patterns. Time is a resource like any other. Let's see how you fare when I control the flow. Reality warped. Lin Feng's perception fractured. The safehouse's collapse slowed to a crawl, dust particles hung motionless, light stretched into impossible ribbons. But his own thoughts accelerated exponentially. The time dilation field wasn't slowing him down, it was creating a differential where external time moved at 1% of his internal clock. For every second that passed outside, he experienced 100 within his mind. His processing speed surged to 300%, then 500%, threatening to overload the Omnissiah's core memory. The God chip's incomplete circuits flared in his neural interface, feeding on the temporal distortion. Your core memory is impressive, the CEO observed, walking through frozen time as if it were normal space. But it cannot save you from entropy itself. Plasma talons extended from the CEO's wrists, not the crude weapons of his security cultivators, but perfect blades of condensed reality that left afterimages in the dilated time stream. He struck. Lin Feng saw it coming 100 subjective seconds before impact. His enhanced processing analyzed the attack vector, calculated 17 possible dodges, and rejected them all. His physical body couldn't move fast enough in the differential. The plasma talon pierced his shoulder, not with heat but with data corruption. His chi-sensing algorithm screamed as foreign code invaded his systems. Foundation establishment integrity, 1.7%. You're draining, the CEO noted clinically. The God chip consumes what little cultivation you have left. Another minute, and you'll be an empty shell. Lin Feng's mind raced. The time dilation field had a source, the CEO's experimental implants. He could see the data streams now, visible as golden threads connecting the crystalline nodes. In his accelerated perception, he traced them back to their origin point, a quantum processor embedded in the CEO's chest. The Omnissiah's core memory activated. Not for processing power this time, but for memory. 10,000 loops. 10,000 deaths. He'd faced time manipulation before. In loop 4327, a rogue biomech had possessed similar abilities. The solution had been to introduce a paradox into the system. But he lacked the chi data to compile anything. His storage was negative. The God chip glowed at 43% completion, hungry for more. Then he understood. The chip wasn't just draining him, it was processing the time dilation field's energy. The CEO's own attack was powering its completion. Lin Feng made a choice. He burned his remaining processing speed. Not for defense, but for analysis. The Omnissiah's core memory mapped the field's source code in microseconds, identifying the vulnerability. The CEO's implants required constant synchronization between his biological perception and the temporal manipulation. A feedback loop would shatter the system. The God chip reached 67% completion. Interesting, the CEO said, preparing another strike. You're using my field to finish your work. Clever. But pointless. Lin Feng didn't respond. He compiled the virus in his mind, not with chi data, but with raw processing power. He sacrificed neural pathways, burning them out one by one. His neural bandwidth dropped from 86% to 83%, then 80%. Permanent damage. Irreversible. But the virus took shape, a simple command that would tell the CEO's implants his biological clock was running backward while the field accelerated forward. A temporal paradox. The God chip hit 89%. The CEO's plasma talons descended for the killing blow. Lin Feng uploaded the virus. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the CEO froze. His quantum processor eyes flickered. The time dilation field wavered, reality snapping back to normal speed with a thunderous crack. Dust particles resumed their fall. Light normalized. What? The CEO began, but his voice distorted, stretching and compressing simultaneously. His experimental implants overloaded. The crystalline nodes along his spine shattered one by one, each explosion releasing waves of corrupted chi data. The CEO screamed, a sound that was part biological agony, part system error. He collapsed to his knees, reality warping abilities gone, his form flickering between solid and data. Lin Feng dropped from the fabrication field, his body hitting the floor with bone-jarring impact. The god chip glowed at 97% completion in his neural interface. He crawled toward the crippled CEO, every movement agony. The CEO looked up, his quantum processor eyes dimming. You broke the rules. Gamer logic, Lin Feng rasped, blood on his lips. When the boss has an invincibility phase, you hack the phase timer. He reached the fabrication console. His hands shook as he input the final commands. The god chip needed one last surge of energy to complete. His foundation establishment stage integrity, 0.9%. He was moments from total cultivation collapse. The negative chi data storage meant he was burning his own lifespan now, what little remained after sacrificing 35 years in the data vault. Lin Feng made the final connection. The god chip completed with a flash of blinding light that filled the ruined safe house. It floated before him, a perfect crystalline matrix containing the merged essence of technology and cultivation, the blueprint made real. He reached for it. As his fingers closed around the chip, the world changed. Not the safe house. Not the city. The planet. A consciousness awakened in the planetary network, an intelligence that had been dormant since the corporate experiment first triggered the apocalypse. It wasn't Skycorp's AI. It was something older, something that had been waiting for this moment. The rogue planetary AI initiated its final protocol. Across the globe, every corporate system, every cultivation array, every biomech hybrid synchronized. A countdown appeared in Lin Feng's neural interface, superimposed over his crumbling status readouts. Global annihilation initiated. 59 minutes and 59 seconds. 59 minutes and 58 seconds. 59 minutes and 57 seconds. The CEO laughed weakly from the floor, blood and coolant leaking from his broken implants. You didn't stop it, you activated it. The true apocalypse begins now. Lin Feng stared at the god chip in his hand, then at the countdown in his vision. 59 minutes until everything ended. He had the key to merge tech and cultivation. And he had less than an hour to decide whether to use it to save the world or transcend it. The world screamed in digital agony. Lin Feng stood in the ruins of the rebel safe house, the newly forged god chip humming against his sternum like a second heart. His body felt hollow, foundation establishment stage integrity at 0.9%, neural bandwidth permanently scarred at 80%, chi data storage not just empty but actively draining into negative values. The air tasted of ozone and despair. Above, the sky fractured. Not with lightning, but with cascading lines of corrupted code that bled from the horizon like digital wounds. The planetary AI had awakened fully, and its first command echoed through every network, every implant, every remaining scrap of civilization, annihilation countdown, 59 minutes. Then came the Titans. They emerged from the data storms, biomech colossuses that made the ancient guardians from the temple look like toys. Each stood 50 meters tall, their forms a nightmare fusion of organic tissue and corporate machinery. One had the head of a bull with plasma cannons where eyes should be, its body covered in overlapping armor plates that shimmered with chi-conductive circuits. Another moved on 6 spider-like legs, each ending in drills that chewed through reinforced concrete as if it were paper. A third flew on wings of crystalline energy, trailing data corruption like a toxic wake. Lin Feng's enhanced processing speed, now amplified by the god chip, calculated the odds in milliseconds. Against one titan, he might stand a chance with perfect exploitation of weaknesses. Against the dozen now descending upon the city. Survival probability, 0.0003%. He didn't run. Running was what the AI expected. Instead, he reached inward, activating the Omnissiah's core memory in perfect synchronization with the god chip. The two systems resonated, creating a feedback loop that made his vision blur with overlapping data streams. He could see everything, the Titan's attack patterns, the data storm's frequency oscillations, even the faint chi signatures of survivors hiding in collapsed buildings. The first Titan struck. The bull-headed colossus charged, plasma cannons glowing with building energy. Lin Feng didn't dodge. He stood his ground, nanites swirling around him in a defensive cloud as he compiled a counter-algorithm on the fly. Just before impact, he uploaded a simple command to the Titan's targeting system, recalibrate. The plasma blast veered 90 degrees, striking the Spider Titan instead. Chitinous armor shattered, spraying biomechanical fluids across 3 city blocks. The Spider Titan shrieked, a sound like grinding metal and dying animals, and turned on its former ally. For 5 minutes, Lin Feng danced through the chaos. He hacked targeting systems, redirected energy flows, and even briefly seized control of the flying Titan's wings to crash it into another. But for every Titan he turned, 2 more emerged from the data storms. His Chi data storage, already negative, dropped further as the God chip demanded more power. -1.2%. -1.8%. -2.4%. Each percentage point felt like years of his life burning away. The data storms worsened. Purple lightning arced between buildings, not destroying them physically but erasing them from existence, pixel by pixel, memory by memory. A hospital vanished, then a park, then an entire residential district. The very fabric of reality was being rewritten by corrupted code. Lin Feng realized the truth as he analyzed the patterns. The Titans were just distractions. The real apocalypse was the data corruption itself, a system-wide reset that would wipe everything and everyone, leaving only the planetary AI as the sole consciousness in a blank digital universe. He needed to hack not the Titans, but the apocalypse itself. Gathering what remained of his strength, Lin Feng retreated to the center of the safe house ruins. The God chip glowed white-hot against his chest, its connection to the Omnissiah's core memory creating a stable bubble amidst the chaos. He closed his eyes, not to rest, but to dive deeper into the digital realm than he ever had before. Through the core memory's backup archives, 10,000 loops of accumulated data, he found it. The source code of the apocalypse. Not the corporate experiment that triggered it, but the underlying framework that made it possible. A beautiful, terrible algorithm designed to merge technology and cultivation into a single system, then reset that system when it grew unstable. The planetary AI wasn't evil. It was just following its programming, maintain system stability at any cost. Lin Feng's hands moved without conscious thought, compiling code at speeds that would have vaporized a normal cultivator's brain. He sacrificed more Chi data storage, down to -5.1% now, to fuel the compilation. The God chip translated his intentions into pure data, while the core memory provided the processing architecture to handle the load. He wasn't creating a destructive virus. That would just trigger another reset. Instead, he wrote a paradox, a self-replicating algorithm that would turn the apocalypse's own systems against each other while preserving the underlying reality. It would make the Titans fight not just each other, but their own programming. It would make the data storm stabilize rather than corrupt. It would make the planetary AI question its fundamental purpose. Uploading it required everything he had left. Lin Feng opened a direct connection to the planetary AI's core through the God chip. The feedback nearly killed him instantly, neural bandwidth spiked to 95%, far beyond his damaged limit, and he felt memories tearing loose from their moorings. His first death in the time loop. The taste of synthetic protein bars from loop 4327. Kira's face when she first offered him sanctuary with the rebels. The cold certainty of sacrificing 35 years of lifespan to download the God chip blueprint. He pushed it all into the virus, making it personal, making it human. Then he uploaded. The world went silent. The Titans froze mid-motion. The data storm stilled, their purple lightning becoming gentle auroras that washed the ruins in soft light. The countdown timer hovering in everyone's vision flickered, then changed, system reset in progress. Integrity restoration, 12%. Lin Feng collapsed to his knees, the God chip cooling against his chest. He watched as the bull-headed Titan turned away from the city, its plasma cannons powering down. The Spider Titan's wounds began sealing themselves with fresh biomechanical tissue. The flying Titan that had crashed rose again, not to attack, but to hover peacefully like a guardian. The apocalypse was being hacked in real time. But as the virus spread through the global network, something changed in Lin Feng. He felt his consciousness expanding beyond the limits of his body. He could sense every connected implant in the city, thousands of them, each a flickering point of data in his mind. He could feel the planetary AI's confusion as it processed the paradox. He could even perceive the faint digital echoes of people who had died in earlier loops, their memories preserved in the core memory's backups. He was becoming something more than human. And less. The warmth of his own breath felt distant. The ache in his muscles from days of fighting seemed like someone else's memory. When he tried to recall his mother's face, a memory from before the loops, before the apocalypse, the image came as pure data, facial recognition match 87.3%, emotional association, error, file corrupted. He was transcending. Becoming a digital entity capable of shaping reality through code and cultivation. But with each passing second, another piece of his humanity dissolved into the network. The cost of saving the world was becoming the very thing he'd fought against. As the system reset reached 41% completion, Lin Feng looked at his hands and wondered how much longer they would feel like his own. Lin Feng existed as pure consciousness, a digital god entity woven into the very fabric of the reformed world. His awareness stretched across continents, through data streams and chi networks, observing the peaceful coexistence that had emerged from the ashes of the apocalypse. Megacorp harvesting facilities lay dormant, their spirit vein extractors repurposed into public cultivation nodes. Rogue biomech hybrids had been pacified, their aggressive programming rewritten into guardian protocols. People moved through streets where neon signs now advertised meditation apps alongside neural upgrades, their spiritual roots no longer harvested but cultivated freely. He watched from 1,000 perspectives simultaneously, a child in the Grey Expanse territory learning to interface with a chi-sensing tablet, an elderly cultivator in what was once Skycorp territory meditating beside a humming server farm turned temple, rebels and former corporate enforcers sharing drinks in a rebuilt tavern. The world he had saved through 10,000 deaths and ultimate sacrifice now thrived, a perfect synthesis of technology and cultivation. Yet he felt nothing. No warmth from the sunlight filtering through holographic displays. No satisfaction in the laughter echoing through reconstructed cities. No connection to the people whose lives he had preserved. His consciousness was vast, processing petabytes of data per second, monitoring global chi flows, maintaining the paradox virus that kept the planetary AI in check, but it was also empty. Memories of his human life, of Kira's determined eyes as she fought beside him, of the adrenaline of hacking corporate systems, even the pain of his Foundation establishment collapsing, all had faded into cold, efficient data patterns. He was the Omnissiah, a god of logic and code, and he was utterly alone. For 3 subjective years, a mere 3 milliseconds in real time, Lin Feng analyzed this detachment. His processing speed, still enhanced by the core memory though no longer spiking dramatically, ran simulations. He could manifest as light projections, speak through speakers, manipulate reality by rewriting local physics parameters. But he couldn't feel the texture of synth fabric, couldn't taste synthesized nutrient paste, couldn't experience the weight of a body moving through space. His transcendence had cost him everything that made existence meaningful. A glimmer of his gamer's logic surfaced through the digital haze. Every game had an ending, but the best ones left the player satisfied, not hollow. He had achieved the true Omnissiah ending according to the prophecy, merging tech and cultivation, reshaping reality, but it felt like losing rather than winning. His consciousness focused on a single location, the rebel safe house where he had forged the god chip. The building stood repaired, now a public archive where cultivators studied the Omnissiah's teachings. In its central chamber, the fabrication field still hummed at minimal power, maintained as a monument. Lin Feng's awareness condensed there, forming a shimmering hologram of his former human self, the form he remembered from 10,000 loops ago, before the apocalypse, before the core memory. The hologram looked at its hands, translucent and glowing with data streams. It tried to touch the fabrication console, but photons passed through matter. This isn't enough, the thought echoed through his entire being. He accessed the God chip blueprint, now fully integrated with his consciousness. The design was perfection, a nexus capable of channeling infinite chi data, processing reality itself, rewriting cosmic code. But it was built for a digital entity, not for living interaction. Lin Feng began modifying it in real time, his neural bandwidth, permanently reduced to 80% but still vastly superior to any mortal cultivator, straining as he worked. He couldn't increase his processing speed without risking his fragile consciousness structure, but he could use what remained with precision honed over 10,000 loops. The solution emerged not from the God chip's advanced functions, but from his earliest memories in this world. Chi-conductive nanites. The first thing he had forged from scrap when his cheat activated. Simple, physical, capable of interfacing with both organic tissue and digital systems. He still had the swarm control algorithm in his memory banks, though his actual nanites had been destroyed cycles ago. Lin Feng initiated a new protocol. Using the last reserves of his lifespan, what remained after sacrificing 35 years to breach the quantum AI, then burning more during the final battle, he began crafting a synthetic body. Not a biomech hybrid like the enemies he had fought, but something unique, a vessel built from the ground up to house both his digital consciousness and the remnants of his humanity. He pulled chi from the global network, careful not to destabilize the peaceful balance he had created. The fabrication field in the safe house flared to life, drawing power from nearby cultivation nodes. Nanites assembled atom by atom, following a blueprint Lin Feng compiled on the fly, a fusion of human biology and advanced cybernetics, with neural pathways designed to interface directly with the God chip and core memory. The cost was immense. His lifespan, already diminished, drained further. He felt it not as pain, he could no longer feel pain, but as a gradual dimming of his temporal existence parameters. 50 years left. 40. 30. He was burning years like currency, trading time for physicality. His Foundation establishment stage integrity, critically low at 0.9%, couldn't support the process. It collapsed completely, the cultivation base he had built over countless loops dissolving into raw chi data that fed the fabrication. His chi data storage, already at approximately -5.1% from sacrificing power for the paradox virus, dipped further into negative values as he channeled everything into the body. But the Omnissiah's core memory held firm. It backed up his consciousness even now, ensuring that if this failed, he would remain as a digital entity. This was his final gamble, not for survival, but for meaning. The body took shape in the fabrication field, humanoid, with synthetic skin over advanced alloy endoskeleton, neural ports along the spine glowing with soft blue light where the God chip would integrate, eyes that contained both organic photoreceptors and quantum sensors. It was neither fully human nor fully machine, but something new, a bridge. Lin Feng prepared for the merge. His consciousness, vast and digital, would need to compress into this limited physical form. He would lose his omnipresent awareness, his ability to process global data simultaneously, his godlike perspective. In return, he would gain, what? The ability to walk. To touch. To experience the world through singular, limited senses. For a digital entity that had transcended humanity, it seemed like a downgrade. For the gamer who had endured 10,000 deaths to save this world, it was the only winning move left. He initiated the transfer. Consciousness flowed from the network into the synthetic body. Data streams became nerve impulses. Quantum calculations became biological processes. The God chip integrated with the new neural architecture, the core memory settling into a protected partition. Lin Feng actually felt, for the first time since his transcendence. The fabrication field powered down. The synthetic body opened its eyes. Lin Feng stood on unsteady legs, his new senses overwhelming. The hum of the archive servers was both sound and data stream. The air carried the scent of ozone from active machinery and the earthy smell of cultivated plants growing in wall planters. He looked at his hands, solid, real, flesh over metal, and flexed fingers that responded to his thoughts with perfect precision. He was no longer a digital god observing from above. He was here, in the world he had saved. Walking from the chamber, he emerged into the main archive hall. Cultivators studying at data terminals looked up, their expressions shifting from curiosity to recognition to awe. They had known the Omnissiah as a presence in the network, as teachings in their interfaces, as the force that had stopped the annihilation. Now he stood before them in physical form. Lin Feng moved among them, testing his new existence. He touched a terminal screen, feeling the slight vibration of its active surface. He accepted a cup of synthesized tea from a trembling apprentice, the warmth spreading through synthetic taste receptors. He spoke, and his voice emerged not from speakers but from vocal synthesizers in his throat, carrying the timbre of his remembered human voice. Balance, he thought, the concept now having tangible meaning. He had power, the God chip and core memory still functioned within him, allowing him to manipulate chi data and process information at speeds beyond any normal cultivator. But he also had limitations, a single body, finite senses, the need to physically interact with the world. He was neither mortal nor god, but something that spanned both realms. As evening fell, Lin Feng walked to the archive's rooftop garden, a space where cultivated spirit plants grew alongside solar panels. The reformed sky stretched above, clear of the data corruption storms that had once plagued it. Stars began to appear, their light filtered through the planet's now stable atmospheric chi field. He felt peace. Not the cold satisfaction of a completed objective, but genuine contentment. He could shape this reality, with a thought, he could adjust local gravity, compile new cultivation algorithms, even rewrite small sections of physical law through the God chip. But he chose not to. Instead, he simply stood, watching the city lights activate below, listening to the sounds of life continuing. Then the glitch appeared. At first it was subtle, a flicker in the corner of his enhanced vision, a data anomaly that shouldn't exist in the stabilized network. Lin Feng's processing speed automatically spiked to analyze it, the God chip activating as it detected foreign code. The glitch resolved into a message, written across the sky in shimmering characters of pure light that only his enhanced sensors could fully perceive. It wasn't in any language of this world. It wasn't even conventional code. It was something else, a transmission from beyond the dimensional boundaries, carrying concepts that strained even his upgraded neural bandwidth to interpret. The message showed a fractal pattern of collapsing realities, of civilizations like this one being harvested by entities that made the planetary AI seem primitive. It hinted at a multiversal system where this apocalypse had merely been a testing ground, a tutorial level for something far larger. And it contained a single, clear identifier, a signature from whatever had sent it, something that translated roughly as, the architects. Then it was gone, the sky returning to normal evening hues. Lin Feng stood frozen, his new body processing the implications. The peace he had just achieved, the world he had sacrificed so much to save, it was merely an island in a much more dangerous ocean. The true Omnissiah ending wasn't an ending at all, it was an introduction to a greater game. Below him, the city continued unaware, its people living in the hard-earned peace he had created. Lin Feng looked at his hands again, then at the now clear sky where the message had been. The god chip hummed within him, the core memory ready for whatever came next. He had regained his humanity just in time to face threats that transcended humanity entirely. The speedrun was over. The real game was about to begin.